Today is actually the first working week following the Chinese New Year, so most of the people are still are trying to get immersed into the happy time when you get to have a happy family reunion with everyone. So actually, it's all refreshing for you because this is the first time after the Chinese New Year, we're going to have the next series of the MMM conferences, so that we can kick off the whole years of discussion. So distinguished guests, distinguished experts, ladies and gentlemen. So good morning, good noon, good evening, and good night as well. So today we have friends coming from the US, Europe, and China. So they are crossing different time zones as well. So as a result of that, the theme for today's conference is we are going to talk about the fourth of the series of MMM series. We are going to talk about the planning for the future, the road safety and mobility. So for your conference, this conference again is currently done by CHTS, TRBIF, and PIARC, Tongji University, and DDSA. So here today, actually, I would like to give you an introduction of for example, the speakers from all the organizations. I'm not in a role to introduce to them, but just to let you know, we have a few speakers. So first of all, I would like to let you know that we are going to do a recap of what we had before. So we're talking about China-US smart mobility, and also green mobility and the smart city and big data, as well as the youth forum as well. And also today, we're happy to have the forum focusing on the issue of road safety and mobility as well. So today we have with us, TRB, for example, chairperson of a coordination commission committee of a TRB, as well as the co-chair. So for example, the Angel from DD to co-moderate the session. Let's try to hand over the microphone to Christos.
Christos, 有请你来主持今天的这个会议。
Let's pass on the microphone to Christos to moderate today's session. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Nina. Hello, everyone, and best wishes for a happy, healthy, and prosperous new year of the Ox. Before we begin with the program of our presentations, it is our honor to have with us the Director General of IRF, Susana Zamataro, and Secretary General of PIARC, Patrick Malajak, who unfortunately is not able to be here with us, although today. Dean of the College of Transportation Engineering at Tongji University, Professor Jianming Ling, and the Vice President and Secretary General of CHTS, Mr. Wenji Liu, who also provide opening remarks. Unfortunately, Mr. Liu is engaged with another issue, and he wants to extend New Year greetings to all of the attendees and wish the webinar and MMM series a success. Similarly, Mr. Malajak is not able to attend today as they are preparing on a webinar in French in the impact of COVID-19, and he would like to send his greetings on behalf of the World Road Association through our expert John Milton, Chair of the Technical Committee on Road Safety, and myself. With that, I would like to turn it over to Susana Zamataro, Director General of IRF. Susana.
Thank you so much, Christos, and welcome everyone. I hope you can hear me well. I have prepared a couple of slides to help me out in my introductory remarks, and I'll try to share them. Can you, the organizers, can you please allow me to share the screen or put up my presentation, please? I'd like, while they do so, I'd like to thank CHTS, who's actually an esteemed member of our federation since many years, as well as TRB, with whom IRF enjoys and has is linked by an MOU and a very fruitful cooperation. And as well PIARC, an historic partner of IRF since more than a century now, because PIARC is older than the IRF. Can I ask the organizers to allow me to share my screen, please? Perfect. I think we should be able to do so now. And let me share. Not this one. Sorry. Let me try it again. Definitely, this is not working. Sorry for the technical mistake. I think it was coming up. We're getting there. There we are. I hope you can see it on the screen. I think I would say 2 words about maybe the International Road Federation. For those of you who are not familiar with our organization, we are an independent not-for-profit organization created after the Second World War, 1948. For obvious reasons, and that was, of course, the need for the reconstruction at that time. We are based in Geneva, Switzerland, and operating globally. We have been serving our membership for the past 73 years, and our membership spans from the public sector, so it could be ministries down to road authorities and municipalities, the private sector, academia, but also NGO. So basically the entire ecosystem that exists around roads and road transport. Many different type of activities that we organized. We cluster them in 3 main strategic pillars of activities: the knowledge sharing and expertise, connections, so building those bridges between these different stakeholders and the different organizations, between businesses as well. And last but not least, policy and advocacy that we do at different level. A lot, of course, at the international level, but also at national level. Let me see if I can move forward. We are also known for the IRF World War Statistics, the WRS, that we produce every year. These are data collected from primary sources, so directly from the governments. And what you see on the screen is the latest addition to the family. In that respect, we have created and launched, thanks to the support of the Total Foundation, a data warehouse, an online data warehouse where our data and also some data visualization tools are made available for you to be able to analyze the sector. Now, going to the topic of today and road safety, of course, the business case for safer roads is a very compelling one, and I think this slide and the figures on this slide speak for it. This slide tells us that for every dollar invested, especially when it comes to low and middle income countries, the return on investment is 18 if you're in $18 if you're in low income countries, and $11 if you are in low and middle income type of economic class. The sector has proven that it has the tools to design, to build safer roads, but these tools and the expertise actually that we have must be used more widely and more widely implemented. We need to work more on what is the road design, the appropriate choice of materials, the supplies, the maintenance scenarios, because they all play a decisive role in the level of safety that is delivered to the user and of course to saving lives. And when we plan, we design and we deliver infrastructure, we need to make sure that we do so for all road users and for the safety of all the road users, and not just for those sitting in a car. So I would say that the point that I want to make with this slide, that actually I'm borrowing from the Vaccine for Roads, so from our colleagues in IRAP. This is not about, really investing in road safety or working on road safety. It's not telling about a country what they have to do, but it's about making meaningful decisions to save millions of lives. And here's an example of how we joined hands and we collaborate at the international level. I have the pleasure and the honor to serve as the co-chair of the Project Group 2 within the United Nations Road Safety Collaboration, in fact. And last year, actually no, in 2019, at the end of 2019, we delivered a new framework that aims really to support countries who are trying to implement initiatives in relation to improve road safety of road infrastructure, both when it comes to new roads or existing roads. This new framework is called the 10-Step Plan for Safer Road Infrastructure. It's available on GTKP.com website, and it's a framework that we are actually implementing and piloting right now in Tanzania, thanks to a project that is supported by the Road Safety Trust, the Road Safety Fund of the United Nations, and the Global Road Safety Facility from the World Bank. It's a project that the International Road Federation is leading and delivering in partnership with the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, IRAP, PIARC, and the Tanzania Road Association. You will be able to learn more about both the 10-step plan, but also on a bit of what is happening around the world at a webinar that we'll be hosting on the 16th of March in the framework of the United Nations Road Safety Collaboration. And I invite all of you to register via the IRF website, irfnet.ch. The other thing that I wanted quickly to flag out as well, it is that as part of our mission, as I mentioned before, we really invest in making sure that information and knowledge and expertise is shared and disseminated. And the GTKP, the Global Transport Knowledge Partnership, is actually a knowledge center managed by the IRF, and on which we are currently hosting some of the knowledge resources produced by the United Nations Road Safety Collaboration Group. And what you see circled in red is exactly the section where you will be able to find plenty of resources that might be very, very useful for you, both when it comes to safe road safety management, but also safer roads and mobility. The GTKP actually has gone over the past 3 months to a complete redesign and is being updated, and we'll be launching it, the new portal, on the 4th of March. So next week, again, an invitation extended to all of you to join us. And with the addition that, beside, of course, having road safety knowledge items, we do have a lot on rural roads as well. We have inherited all the knowledge produced by the RECAP program, the high volume transport program as well, and a completely new section that compiles knowledge resources on COVID-19 and transport, both in terms of responses and the recovery. So again, all of you welcome to join us, and I hope I'll have a chance to tell you more about what I've just shared during the panel discussion at the end of this. I'll stop sharing my screen, and I guess it's back to you, Christos. Thank you.
Now it's my turn to continue our moderation work, because I'm going to introduce to you who we have. So we have with us Lin Jieming, who is the Dean of the College of the Transportation Engineering of Tongji University. So let's welcome the Dean in. So can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. I would like to hand over the microphone to Dean Lin.
PIARC, TRB, CHTS, and DD. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for different friends. I'm Jieming Lin from Tongji University. First, on behalf of College of Transportation Engineering Tongji University, I would like to express my warmest welcome and earnest appreciation to the distinguished organizers, speakers, and friends for joining us. Transportation has been one of the leading disciplines at Tongji University, while road safety and mobility is our key research direction. To support the related fundamental research, we have established the first 8 degree of freedom driving simulator in China in 2011, and started the naturalistic driving study in 2012. Besides, to boost the international collaborations of this area, we have established the joint International Research Laboratory of Transportation Safety in 2015, with partners including Columbia University, Iowa University, German Aerospace Center, Tokyo University, and Center. Besides, we have been granted for the International Talent Introducing Platform by the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China, based on which there are over 30 overseas experts who come to Tongji work with us annually. With all the international collaborations mentioned above, we have undertaken several Horizon 2020 projects and a dozen international collaboration projects sponsored by bilateral governments. Moreover, as the emerging trends of deploying autonomous vehicles and formulating the mobility as a service, we have listed several priority research directions that lie in the scope of road safety and mobility, including roadway infrastructure design for mixtured human and robotic drivers, safety assurance for the autonomous vehicles, and the transportation system optimization and management within the framework of MAS. We will continue to explore the related topics, as our university name Tongji means serving the people and the world with one heart on the same boat. I invited sincerely the speakers and the attendees of this webinar to work together with us. Let's contribute the safer and the more efficient transportation system. Finally, I wish the webinar a great success. Many thanks. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Professor Lin. 非常感谢林院长给我们带来的介绍。然后，那我们会
Thank you very much for your introduction.
演讲的环节。
Now let's move on to the keynote speech section.
Hello, Chris. Could you give a...
So today's webinar is focused on traffic safety and planning for the future. No matter where we are from, no matter our organization and country, we all share one focal point in the vision of our agencies, and that is safety. A lot of us share in the vision of zero fatalities and zero injuries, and work diligently to achieve that. The webinar today, which is structured in two parts, will provide us with great information that can help us in that direction. Part one will be presentations by some accomplished partners and individuals in the area of safety, followed by a couple of questions after each presentation. Part two will be a panel discussion with our experts, moderated by Professor Wang. We invite all of the attendees to please ask their questions in the Q&A, and Angel and I, will direct them appropriately when is that. With that, I will turn it back to my co-moderator, Angel, to introduce Professor Wang.
Chris 的介绍。那由我来。
Thank you very much for your introduction, Christos. Now, I would like to say a few words about Dr. Xuesong Wang. Dr. Wang is a professor of Tongji University, a professor of transportation engineering college at Tongji University. He has been involved in a lot of research topics on the road and traffic engineering and road safety. Now, today, Professor Wang is going to deliver a presentation on transportation safety planning, challenges and experiences. Now, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Professor Wang. Can I share my screen now? I think it will be popping up in a minute. Can you hear me? Yes, we can.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Wang from Tongji University. My presentation topic is transportation safety planning, challenges and experience. Okay, my presentation will cover 5 topics. Since it's for many of you, it's my first time to talk with you, so I would like to cover a brief introduction about Tongji University Traffic Safety Program. And then I will introduce international collaboration and challenges for safety improvement. Then the third topic is the best example of international cities and the technical support for city-level safety improvement conducted at Tongji University for many other cities in China. And finally, I will introduce briefly the Central Traffic Safety Whitepaper. We just did this project last year. Tongji University covers School of Transportation Engineering. At this school, we have 170 faculties and 1,000 undergraduate students and 800 graduate students. All these faculties are focused on transportation engineering. At Tongji University, traffic safety is one of the major research areas. As Professor Lin just introduced, we have 8 degree of freedom driving simulator. This has been extensively used at Tongji University for safety-related studies. For example, we use driving simulators to study the driver behaviors, and also we use it to evaluate the geometric design of the new build road. Also, we are working on the naturalistic driving studies, and of course, traffic safety data analysis is very important. This is a very short way. Yeah, it is 8 degree of freedom. So when we conduct the test, so it can move around the lab. Starting from 2012, we work with GM and Virginia Tech for the naturalistic driving studies for the passenger car drivers. And later we work with Volvo and Chalmers University of Technologies for the city trucks. And then from 2016, we work with Together for Safer Road for 4 types of professional drivers in Shanghai. And from 2019 till now, we are working with China Pacific Insurance Company for a big project for commercial vehicle drivers, which include driver state monitoring and ADAS systems for each of the trucks. The total size is 1,000 fleet and over 28,000 drivers for this project. As for the traffic safety analysis, we are working with many cities and provinces in China. In 2009, we started work with Shanghai, and we developed the WebGIS-based safety analysis tool for Shanghai Traffic Police Department. And now it has been applied in 13 provinces and cities in China. For the roadway safety improvement, we are working. Sorry, it's yeah, for the roadway safety improvement, currently we are working with more than 11 provinces and states and cities in China. In the last 5 years, our research group conducted safety improvement for more than 3,500 kilometers of roadways, which include freeways and highways and urban streets in China. For the transportation safety planning, I joined Tongji University in 2008 and started from 2009. I started to this research for the city level, safety evaluation and transportation safety planning, international collaborations. In 2012, I was responsible for Shanghai transportation development white paper, the safety policies. And later we start to work with Tibet and Shenzhen and Train and other cities and provinces for safety plan. Particularly in 2015, I serve as a co-technical lead for Shanghai Road Traffic Safety Improvement Program, which is sponsored by the Bloomberg Initiative for Global Road Safety. And secondly, the international cooperation and the challenges of safety improvement. Currently, I'm responsible for a project, which is an international collaboration project. The name of the project is International Collaborative Analysis of Road Traffic Safety Statistics and Safety Models. First, we will build the International Traffic Safety Management data platform. Then, based on this data, then we will conduct the macro level safety analysis. And also, we will focus on we will work on the roadway safety improvement. Particularly, we will conduct the international comparisons for the country and the city, and also for the roadways. Yeah, this project is have several universities and research institutes within China, and also we are working with National Technical University of Athens from Greece, and the University of Central Florida, Kudu University from US, and Loughborough University from UK, and the German Aerospace Center from Germany. At the country level, we select Australia, Germany, Greece, Japan, Sweden, United Kingdom, US as high-income countries, and also we select some countries from middle-income level and low-income levels. For each of the countries, we will collect the crash data and many other data for more than 50 years. And this is the information for the safety comparisons. We can see from these slides, the fatality rate per 100,000 population in 2013 and 2016 is was 18.8 and 18.2 for China, which is much higher than UK, Germany, and other developed countries. This data was used. The data was from the World Health Organization report. So it is definitely China has lots. We have to improve our safety record. Of course, there's still some other countries which is even worse than China. For example, the Saudi Arabia and Thailand and other countries. These are the 100,000 population fatality rate per 100,000 population in the last 40 years for the selected countries. From this data, we can see the US and Australia were similar in 1980s, but Australia has been remarkably getting safety gains, including those of the US. If compared with the mid-90s, road safety situation in Greece is now more than 75% reduced in terms of fatality rates. Sweden and the UK were found to be the best performance in terms of reduction in fatality rate. And the rest of the countries show more than similar increasing trends in fatality rate for the selected countries. Although these countries are already very good, but when we compare this estimated target by the World Health Organization for in 2020s, we can see, except for Greece, all other selected countries are much higher than the targeted numbers. So it means we have to work dramatically to reduce their symptoms, their fatalities. The Stockholm Declaration calls for a new global target to reduce road traffic deaths and injuries by 50% by 2030. Of course, it's very challenging based on the experience in the last 10 years. Then we compare the cities. Yeah, we select some Chinese cities like Shanghai, Beijing, and Guangzhou, Chongqing. And also we collect the data from New York, Melbourne, Tokyo, London, and Berlin. We can see in almost all these Chinese cities have very high numbers of traffic fatalities. And when we compare using the population, the fatality rate of 100,000 population, we can see although the Chinese city have a large population, but still our fatality rate is much higher than these developed than these cities selected from developed countries. Yeah, as we just introduced, Shanghai is the first city in China set the traffic safety as a primary goal in 2013. But in general, Chinese cities are still develop their traffic safety plan based on the experience. And compared to the developed countries, particularly the US and other European countries, we can see 34 cities in the US have the Vision Zero plans in 2018, and 45 cities in the US had the Vision Zero plans in 2020. So the city level safety planning and management in China is far behind of the expectations. And the third part is the best examples of international cities. We select some best cities all over the world, including New York, Chicago, London, Stockholm, Melbourne, Singapore, and some Chinese cities. When we conduct this collaborations, we search lots of documents and report and data for each selected cities. And based on the information we collected, we summarize the information in these tables. Now we have all the cities and also compare the strategy, action plan, organization cooperation, roadway safety improvement, education, government management, and public involvement, and technology applications. When we compare this from these perspectives, we can see most of these cities in the developed countries develop the strategies and action plan in very good ways. But the Chinese cities are not as good as these international cities. For the roadway safety improvement, some of Chinese cities is very serious, like Shanghai, but New York is much better than other cities. The public involvement for these international cities is always better than Chinese cities. And for the technology applications and enforcement, the Chinese cities are also doing very well. Now we summarize their experience. The first is the developed country. The cities of these developed countries emphasize the traffic safety plan. For example, in London, they developed the strategic plan every 2 to 3 years. And for New York, they have the Vision Zero action plan every year. So this is much better than the Chinese cities. And for the data-driven decision making, for New York, they developed the pedestrian safety and the cycling safety report. And also they treated the street safety improvement very seriously. The typical cities are New York, London, and Wang. And for roadway safety improvement, New York has systematic documents in street design. They have the active design and making street safer street and active design guidelines and street design values. And Shanghai, we are working with traffic police very closely and develop these 4 steps roadway safety improvement programs. And for government agency corporations, New York has very good systems. The different government agencies work very closely for the safety improvement. And one of the Chinese cities, Shenzhen, is performing very good. All of the cities, 11 districts and 8 towns have established the traffic safety councils. And for the enforcement educations, the Chinese city is improving very fast in last several years. They have conducted very emphasis groups of peoples and conducted traffic safety educations. And for the public involvement, all these international cities are much better than China. For example, New York and Singapore, they're doing very good in public involvement for their safety improvement. For the technology applications, the Chinese city is working very hard in the last several years to use the new technology, for example, monitoring systems and some softwares to improve the safety management. For the technical support for city-level safety improvement, we are working a lot with the Chinese cities and provinces. For example, we developed the safety analysis report for Shanghai for their enforcement, to improve their enforcement in 2016. We analyzed the traffic crash data and the traffic violation data for Shanghai to see their crash spatial distributions and to compare if there is some areas which have more crash but less traffic violations. And also, we already developed 95 macro-level safety models for Shanghai, which included the models at different areas. For example, some models for downtown, some for urban areas, some for the entire cities, and for total crash, for pedestrian crash, and for non-motorized vehicles. So this has been already conducted in Shanghai for in the last 5 years. This is just one example of macro-level safety models. For the data preparations, we collected the area level data for the land use and the social demographic and the crash data to identify the impact factors of macro-level safeties. This is one of the models we developed for Shanghai. And also in the last 2 to 3 years, not just to identify the impact factors, we are trying to apply this analysis result for the safety improvement. For example, based on the crash location, we extract these crash numbers for each town or street, and then identifies the hazardous routes, rural level hotspot, hot routes for engineering countermeasures. And at the same time, we geocode the people who are living, and then conduct these hot routes for safety educations in Shanghai. Finally, I will just introduce the Shenzhen Traffic Safety Whitepaper very briefly. Based on the international cooperation, then we analyze the traffic safety status in Shenzhen, and then we try to study if we can apply some of these countermeasures, which has been successfully applied in other cities in Shenzhen. And then we will conduct the surveys and data analysis to identify the safety emphasis areas for Shenzhen. And then based on the international experience, we propose the countermeasures for Shenzhen for its safety improvement. So this is the structure of the Shenzhen project. So first, we analyze the city development and the safety status based on the data and based on the surveys. And the second part is the international comparisons. As we just introduced, we collect many cities of international cities which has the best safety performance, and also some Chinese cities for comparisons, and summarize their experience. And for the third part is the roadway safety improvement management. Based on data analysis, we identify there's safety problems, and also we conduct the field investigations to identify the problems of roadways. And the part 4 is the commercial vehicle safety management. We conduct systematic surveys for the companies and also for the government and for the associations to identify the specific safety problems and the management levels in Shenzhen. And for part 5 is pedestrian and bicycle cities, because the pedestrian and bicycle are the major city problems in Shenzhen. Based on the surveys and based on the city analysis, we identified the specific problems for pedestrian and bicycles. And also we conduct this traffic safety management. We analyze the organizations and the technology, the education, and the traffic safety laws for Shenzhen to identify the emphasis areas for city management. For the last part, based on the emphasis areas we identified in previous studies, and then we set the goals and objectives for Shenzhen. And then based on the experience, just to summarize, we did propose the countermeasures for Shenzhen. And then we propose an action plan for Shenzhen for next 5 or 10 years. So this is the project structures. Particularly, I would like to introduce the objectives for Shenzhen. Based on the international cities, and we track the traffic safety trend for all these cities, and then we have these goals by 2025. We try to reach the city level of the current safety status of the international cities. And by 2030, we try to reach or even be better than the city level of international cities in 2030s. Based on these goals, then we estimate the number of the fatalities and the fatality rate for Shenzhen for next 5 or 10 years. So this is my presentation. Thank you.
好的，好，非常感谢王教授的演讲。然
Well,
后
thank you very much, Mr. Wang, for your excellent presentation. A kind reminder that for all the audience through Zoom, if you have any questions, you can feel free to leave your questions at the chat box. And then we're going to select some questions to go through the Q&A. And also, for the friends tuning from the live streaming at Bilibili, you can also pose a question on Bilibili as well. So our working staff is going to try to put a question forward to our panelists. And then if we have some time, we're going to do questions together. Okay, back to Chris. So actually, back to you. You can continue your moderation. Thank you.
Thank you, Angel, and thank you, Professor Wang. With that, I'm going to turn over the presentation to Kim Eckles. Kim is a transportation service leader for VHP, one of the large engineering consulting companies in the United States. And she's also co-chair of TRB's ACS 20, the Standing Committee on Safety Performance Analysis. Kim is going to talk to us about trends in highway safety for state and local agencies in the United States. Kim?
Thanks, Krista. And so I believe James is going to share my slides, if you don't mind. Okay, great. Well, and so first of all, thank you for the opportunity to come here and meet with all of you. I think it's just, technology is just really incredible that we can all be across the globe and have this opportunity to come together and talk about something that we're all passionate about, and that's highway safety. As Chris said, I'm with a company called VHP, but I also am co-chair of a TRB committee that focuses on highway safety, and that's the Standing Committee on Safety Performance and Analysis. Just for a little bit of context, I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is a medium-sized city in the U.S. We're on the Atlantic coast. We're about maybe about a 4-hour drive south of Washington, D.C. I am broadcasting to you from my home in Raleigh, and in my home office, I share it with an 80-pound hound dog, which is about 35 kilograms, and her name is Joy. So if at any point during our discussion today, you hear a very deep howling dog, that would be Joy. I look forward to the Q&A, but we'll start with a little overview. Next slide, please. An overview of the presentation. Next slide, please. Great, thank you. So I have a fairly brief presentation today, and it will actually pick up on some of the themes that Dr. Wang discussed, and then John Milton will pick up on some of the themes that I discussed. It all connects together nicely. So I want to say just a brief word about the structure of state, local, and tribal agencies in the US and what that means for themes when we're trying to identify themes in transportation that might impact highway safety. Understanding that structure of the agencies is important. I know Dr. Wang talked about different cities around the world and how they compared and how those compared to China. And so, understanding that perspective is really important. And then with a focus on, well, what are those emerging themes? There's two themes that I'd like to mention. And one is TISMO, and the other is DDSA, and I'll define both of those acronyms for you. Next slide, please. So just a bit by the numbers in the US. The US at the state level, some of our roads in the US, our highways, our roads are controlled by state organizations. And so we have 50 states, the District of Columbia or DC, and then Puerto Rico. And when we look at those 52 agencies combined, they control about 21% of our rural roads and only 13% of our urban miles. So as far as decision-making and trends, really, those state agencies, which are very important, but they're only responsible for just a small portion of our roads. It's really at the local level. So I was happy to hear Dr. Wang talk about the cities, because it's really at our local level where the roads are controlled, and we really see themes emerge, like Vision Zero, which he also mentioned. So there are thousands of cities and counties, which are kind of a larger area that control roads in the US. So really for our rural miles, and most of the US is rural, 75% of our rural roads are controlled by cities and counties. But 87% of our urban roads are controlled by mostly cities. So when we're looking at themes, or we're trying to make a difference in highway safety and in performance, there's a lot of agencies that we're working with. We also have some federal roads in the US as well, and these include our tribal roads, roads like within our Park Service. If you visited the US and maybe went to a national park like Yellowstone, the Park Service, they control their own roads. And then there's some other federal agencies, but that's a small percent of roads in the US, about 4% of our rural miles and less than 1% of our urban miles. And so just pictures here, I wanted to have some pictures to kind of illustrate. And so before I say it, you might be able to guess what the city is there. The upper right picture is a small town in New Hampshire, which is very scenic. The lower right picture is Shenandoah National Park, which is in Virginia outside of DC, and it's gorgeous, lots of beautiful vistas of the Blue Ridge Mountains. And that city, hopefully you've guessed by now, is beautiful Boston, which right now is covered with about 2 feet of snow. Next slide, please. So as we're talking and thinking about trends in the US, or just trends in safety, there's a lot of things like, well, what causes a trend? How do we, what are the things that cause a trend to happen? And so, and then maybe a trend in highway safety, like something like Vision Zero, where these, thousands of cities and counties will start to turn their attention to it. So often it's motivated by need. So obviously crash trends is, maybe we see more pedestrian fatalities and across the nation, if we see that, then a lot of agencies start to turn their attention there. It could also be public interest. There's a lot of interest in the US right now in walking and cycling, and that interest is nationwide. It could also be to meet a requirement. So even though all of the city and local agencies are responsible for their own roads, they still receive some funding from the federal government. And so the funding legislation, or the bill that provides those funds, has a real impact on trends, because usually the funds have some requirements on them. It could also be an external constraint, and of course the economy is the best one. As gas prices go down, we see a lot more travel, and so that increases the amount of cars on the road and has, unfortunately, a negative impact on safety. But it could also reflect what I call the evolution of an opportunity in the transportation community. And so the two that I'm going to talk about today are really motivated by, an evolution in our capabilities, our data capabilities, and kind of our understanding of some of the things that impact safety. So, part of my role, both in my role at my company and my role with PRB, is to help to identify these trends so that we can help agencies prepare for them and have the right resources. And so how do I do that? So I think about the requests that I get from our state and local clients. For example, an agency might say they're trying to prepare for connected and autonomous vehicles, but they don't know what that might mean for their assets. So like their bridges, their traffic signals. And so when I hear that from several agencies, a similar concern, then I know that there's a trend emerging and that we have to start assembling those resources and help them to prepare for it. One big way is through research studies. So when I see through TRB, maybe I see a lot of papers starting to converge on a topic or an idea. It's a good indicator that there's a trend in the U.S. There's also pooled fund studies, and John's going to talk a little bit more about that. But in the U.S., it allows those 50 states to come together with their money. Maybe a group of them, maybe 10 states, pool their money together because they all are trying to address a topic. And then also news stories and following the news and kind of understanding things that are happening across the U.S. And thinking about how that will impact transportation. And in the last year, the U.S., there's been a lot more focus on equity. And so that has some very specific impacts in transportation. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. So as I mentioned, there's two trends that I'm going to discuss today. The first is data-driven safety analysis, or DDSA, and the second is TSMO, or Transportation Systems Management and Operations. I'm going to discuss DDSA first because it really leads into TSMO. And Dr. Wang actually discussed in several of his slides data-driven decision-making. And so that's what data-driven safety analysis is. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I love this infographic because it takes the concept of data-driven safety analysis and it presents it in a very manageable chunks. So it's through improved data collection and analysis. So not just improving how we collect data, but the sources of data and the speed at which we get that data. So from big data and probe data and other things, we now have so much more data on transportation and highway safety. So taking that improved data and our ability to analyze that and our understanding of how we're analyzing it and using that to make more informed decisions. So deciding between different projects or maybe for a given project, different strategies so that we can better target our investments. And so that money will go further. And then the end result will be fewer fatalities and serious injury. Next slide, please. Thank you. So DDSA is the application of the latest evidence-based tools and approaches to safety analysis. These approaches use crash, roadway, and traffic volume data to provide reliable estimates of an existing or proposed roadway's expected safety performance. So we're using that better data and better sources and more timely data to really estimate what we think will happen with safety. So DDSA helps agencies, those state and local agencies, to quantify the safety impacts of their decisions. Similar to the way that for years agencies have been quantifying traffic growth, environmental impacts, traffic operations. pavement life, and construction costs. But it's really just been within maybe the last 20 years that we've really been able to start to understand safety decisions and what we can expect from an outcome. There's two resources shown here on the screen, and they're both kind of critical to DDSA. The lower one is the CMF Clearinghouse, and that's located at cmfclearinghouse.org. It's a clearinghouse of all different safety studies and the quantified impact that those studies have found for different strategies. The second, the larger graphic, is the Highway Safety Manual, and I'll speak a little bit about that next. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so the DDSA methods are contained within this one primary document, the Highway Safety Manual. It was published by a group called AASHTO, the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. And it compiled years and really decades of research conducted by the Transportation Research Board, conducted by state DOTs and the Federal Highway Administration into one location. It was first published just a little over 10 years ago, and it contained crash prediction models for rural two-lane roads, multi-lane rural highways, and urban and suburban arterials. The models for freeways and freeway interchanges were added in 2014 as a supplement, and they weren't in the 2010 because they weren't ready, because it really has been some evolving knowledge. Next slide, please. So this next slide shows what we consider to be the safety management process in the US. It starts at the top with network screening, so looking at the network and identifying the locations that are in need of maybe some intervention, diagnosing the problems, selecting those countermeasures, and so having that information from the CMF Clearinghouse on what works or what doesn't work is so important. The economic appraisal is then, taking a look at between alternatives or alternative locations where we can make the best use of funds, then prioritizing the projects. And then finally, after the projects are implemented, we have to evaluate them and to understand how they did perform so that we have a feedback loop. Next slide, please. So the shift in thought in agencies in the US towards this data-driven safety approach has impacts at all levels, so planning, design, and operations. The graphic to the right is illustrating one state DOT's planning level, basically matrix, where they think at the planning level about the projects that they're going to select and what factor safety is in their selection. And now that we have these tools to quantify safety, we can do that. It's also considered in design and in operations in many ways. Next slide. So specifically in operations, that leads us to our second topic, which is transportation systems management and operations. Next slide, please. So this slide presents the definition of TSMO, which is how the acronym is called in the US. TSMO offers agencies a wide range of potential strategies for addressing network and project level performance needs with cost-effective tailored strategies. Some regions in the US have found it useful to develop these TSMO plans to define a common vision for their region, to develop operations objectives, to guide the selection of strategies, identify performance measures, and then track their progress. So that feedback loop about tracking how something performs. And so TSMO strategies have really increasing interest in the US. As you can see that those strategies are there to optimize performance of the existing infrastructure. So as cities grow and congestion grows and all different areas across the US experience more traffic and more cars, we really need to optimize the infrastructure that we have. Next slide, please. So although the definition is good, I think it always helps to see, like, well, what are the strategies? So what's included in here? And so there's several strategies listed here that are TSMO. So the first are managed lanes. I think those are the strategies that are most often thought of when people are discussing TSMO, and that's, you know, using lanes for high occupancy vehicles or high occupancy tolls. But there's also other things like variable speed limits, or even just traffic signal coordination is a TSMO strategy. And they're not just operational strategies, they're also safety strategies, including some of the warning applications that are emerging in the US. Next slide, please. And of course, a definition is one way to describe TSMO. A list of strategies is another, but my favorite way is through pictures. And so I selected some pictures from some different TSMO strategies that my firm has worked on around the US. And I wanted to connect it to my second slide in saying that TSMO strategies are not just about freeway operations, but they're about all roads. And so in the bottom right corner, you know, there's a very rural application of variable speed limit for weather conditions. But so TSMO strategies can take a lot of different forms and are applicable to lots of different types of roadways. Some of those safety applications that I mentioned have a lot of potential on our rural two-lane roads. So, so TSMO strategies impact all agencies across the US. Next slide, please. So the objective of a safety performance of TSMO strategies, because that's what we're discussing today, right? So how does a TSMO strategy, or maybe a combination of strategies, you know, how do we determine how implementing that strategy will impact, or maybe has impacted, safety? And so there's a lot of things that we have to consider when implementing a strategy and trying to figure out the safety performance. So the numbers of crashes, the severity of those crashes, and the types of crashes really define the safety performance of a highway segment or an intersection or a facility or even a network. And there are three general sets of approaches for analyzing impact of safety performance, not just of TSMO strategies, but just in general when we're looking at a strategy. And the first is approaches based on crash data, and I think that's the gold standard. Approaches based on alternative or surrogate measures of safety. There's a lot of work on surrogate measures of safety. They're too numerous, but things like time to collision are good surrogates. And then the third is approaches based on simulating crash occurrence and severity. So again, Dr. Wang, I really appreciated your presentation because you showed us an example of a simulator. The needs assessment to determine the existing knowledge analysis methods and research needed for quantifying the safety performance of TSMOs could use any of these three approaches. Next slide. So I like examples, and the classic example of a TSMO strategy is part-time shoulder use. So this is where during part of the day that the shoulder is devoted to travel. This is generally an urban strategy, although not always. And in some applications, that shoulder use is during peak periods maybe is limited to certain types of vehicles, such as transit vehicles or high occupancy vehicles. And then the shoulder, what it's doing there is providing some additional capacity. So it helps with operations, but it may also help with safety, especially if the agency is experiencing a lot of secondary crashes from congestion. At other times, the shoulder is used for the typical uses. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so those differences in how it's used and whether it's the right shoulder or the left shoulder, when it operates, and what happens with speed all impact the safety performance. So when we're trying to determine, is this strategy, how will the strategy impact safety? we really need to think about those things. And so if we're looking at what one agency did, unless our application of that strategy mirrors the first agency, we'll have a different experience. Next slide. So some final considerations are for a strategy like this would be actually for not just this strategy, but for lots of TISML strategies are really what those geometric characterizations are. So in this case, with using that shoulder, it really changes the operating characteristics of the roadway. So the shoulder width is different because there's less shoulder. The lateral clearance, or that distance to roadside objects that might be hazards, is different. Even the stopping sight distance becomes different because we've changed the geometry just by using that shoulder. So we really have to think about that. But we also have to think about what we would call the spatial extent of the performance. And so if a freeway adds a lane because they're using a shoulder, then that might actually even divert drivers from other roadways. So it's not just about the performance of that facility, but it's about the performance of the network. Next slide, please. So there are some great resources in the US right now to help think through some of these. And the first is the safety analysis needs assessment. So some of the concepts that I laid out here are laid out in that document. And then there's 2 supplementary documents that go with it. And those are take 2 of the TISML strategies that were listed in our strategies, and it actually takes through all the considerations. So the document on the left is the more general document, and the 2 on the right take 2 strategies and work through them. Next slide. So I just want to leave you, before we conclude, with some thoughts about, since the focus of today's webinar is on trends and thinking about the future, my thoughts on what's next here in the US. And so the picture here is the last sunset on the East Coast in the 2020. And I thought that would be appropriate. So what's next? What does 2021 and beyond have for us? So I believe that the safe system approach in the US, which was developed in Sweden, which is Dr. Wang illuminated as one of the best safety countries as far as safety performance. I think we're going to see much more of that in the US. As I mentioned, I think we'll also see a lot of equity considerations in transportation. I think we're going to see more connectivity in our medium-sized cities and more connections with big data. So there's so many data sources out there right now. I know we all carry a phone with us everywhere. And so there's a lot of passively collected data that I think will start to inform transportation and specifically highway safety. And so next slide. And so with that, thank you so much for this opportunity, and I look forward to the panel.
Kim, thank you so much, for the great presentation. One of the questions that we had in the Q&A was whether we would be able to share either the links that you had on your presentation or the presentation. So we can discuss that later and provide a response, through the Q&A. So with that, in the interest of time, I am going to introduce Dr. John Milton from Washington State DOT. John is actually wearing 2 hats here, not just one. He is the chair of PIARC's Technical Committee 3.1 on road safety. And at the same time, he is the section chair for TRB's section ACS 00 on safety. John, may I please turn it over to you?
Thank you, Christos, and thank you very much. I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen here. And hopefully you see the full screen. Is that what you're seeing?
Hey, John, we
see
we
we
cannot
don't
see
see
the
presentation
full
mode. We see the slide and then the next slide.
So Christo, maybe it would be better. I think I'm having a little bit of issue here.
Let's see, James, would you be able to cue John's presentation, please, for us? Now we're on full screen.
Are you? Okay, so I'll go ahead and move forward with this. So what I'm going to talk about today is TSMO and safety and the issues that we're seeing in the United States. So as Kim mentioned, when we talk about TSMO, there's a lot of different categories, different areas of which we see TSMO taking place. And in the United States, we've often put it into different categories: planning, partnering, ITS, transportation demand management, cooperative and automated transportation, as well as traditional traffic operations. So these are areas, categories, ideas that when we think about things in terms of safety countermeasures, we have a lot of opportunity. Now, when you think about TSMO, it really ranges in its application from passive management to active management types of strategies. And when we get into this, it really can be applied in different situations, from operation type things to managing demand to considering expansion. So in the US, what we're finding in a lot of places is that it's very difficult to expand capacity, build new lanes. So we're really focusing on TSMO as a strategy to really maximize what we have out in the field in a way that we haven't been able to do before. So as Kim mentioned, in the United States, we have a research program every year that we fund, the National Cooperative Highway Research Program, which is funded at about 47 million, I think, this year. And we go through and select, and this is throughout the safety programs for the state, but we select a lot of research. In addition to that, we have what's called the pooled funds, and the pooled funds are used when states really want to delve down in something very specific for their individual needs or for whatever is happening within the individual states. So here, our pooled fund is 22 states, and it's really focused on safety quantification. One of the questions that came up is there's ongoing issues related to TSMO, and so could we do research in that specific area? And the answer was yes. The states direct this research. The teams that participate, the states that participate in funding the research through these pooled funds, select whatever research that they want in a way that they want it done. So the study was done essentially, and as Kim pointed out a little bit earlier, the safety analysis needs assessment, and we'll be able to provide those links to you in just a little bit. But in addition, I wanted to point out a few PIARC documents for resources, low cost ITS. So PIARC, you can go out to the website and download these for free. And then a second one on sustainable shared mobility. Now, moving back to the FHWA research that we did as part of the pooled fund drive, the way that we organize this is really to get in safety specific strategies, relationships between TSMO measures and operational safety performance, weather related, estimating TSMO performance effects, and TSMO safety performance gaps and limitations. So again, we really wanted to focus it in a way that we could understand how safety and TSMO work together, and then use that methodology in terms of being able to identify safety performance. Now, what I'd like to do now is move into some case study applications that we're seeing in the US. Really, I'm going to start with a broad statewide type of look, and then I'm going to move into some innovations, and then we'll bring it down to the city level. So the first application that we're seeing was from Florida's real-time traffic analysis situation. And what they're doing here is looking at real-time crash risk prediction. So they're using in-field information to provide traffic profiles to identify high-risk locations as they're happening and to be able to visualize that on a system. The idea behind what they're trying to achieve is to generate proactive traffic management strategies. So you can see here, essentially, they're coming up with ideas from their algorithms to tell them, implement this solution in the field right now, and it will help your traffic safety improvement. The next thing that they're looking at is historical safety data visualization. So the idea is that when they have an event in the field, the system will tell them and display essentially what should be implemented and how it should be implemented. So right here that I'm showing you is what they call the proactive traffic management strategy report. And it will show you here that in a number of different locations, it's making recommendations on the system that you should be doing certain things. The other thing is that you can visualize historic crashes, historic crash risk, or essentially unexpected floating car events. So they have vehicles that are basically, they can take a look at specifically in seeing what's happening. And again, the idea is to be proactive in trying to make a selection. When you think of this in terms of what it does for safety, if you can get to the event in a proactive manner, you can reduce the potential for conflict and therefore reduce the crashes overall. The other thing that they're able to do is macro level analysis. So the macro level analysis, unlike what you might be doing in real time, is looking at the system as a whole in terms of what the historical data is telling you. So when they can do this, there's a number of different ways that they can cut it, generally in crash type, violations, at-fault drivers. So they can cut it in many different ways. The diagram down here, DUI crashes related to teenagers with within high school locations. So that's very specific information. And you can see here in these reds that they essentially identified a couple of specific locations where they're seeing those types of events. So the idea, I may want to address those specific types of events to be able to go out and select a potential countermeasure to address that. And that's what they call the decision support system. So the decision support system can cut the data in many different ways to identify locations with the most potential for safety improvement. The fact that congestion drives many of the crash locations, we can't always do a great deal with that. The idea with potential for safety improvement is we look at what we could do if we were to apply some countermeasure to select the most efficient countermeasure and effectiveness in terms of BC ratio. So BC ratio, that you'll see this time and time again within the states, is that we really want to do some economic level analysis to be able to determine what are the most appropriate countermeasures and under what conditions. And right here, you can see that it came up with a couple of selected countermeasures. So this is a minor arterial kind of collector type of road. Essentially, they came up with automated speed enforcement, as well as a second countermeasure for installation of speed humps. That is, they're having challenges with speed, so do a couple of speed countermeasures to bring down the crashes. This next idea I want to show you is from the state of Washington. So in the state of Washington, this is a very special, innovative type of approach. As many of you know, there are very difficult situations that you face in terms of being able to bring data together. Often it's high cost, locations are difficult to get to in some cases. They may be out in a rural area, a more suburban area. So the system developed by Yinhai Wang at the University of Washington STAR Lab was really identified to be much more localized and to come up with a system that could bring a whole lot of technology together into one place. So what I'm showing here is the University of Washington STAR lab developed this system. Essentially, the idea is that if we bring the mobile unit for sensing traffic, the idea is to bring sensor information either from a vehicle, it could be from a mobile device, into this MUS system, and essentially provide it to TMCs, and this is the Washington Seattle area TMC, that you can see a number of different cameras, but to bring that information into a given location. For the most part right now, we focus on more of the urban situations. We want to get out into the local roads as well as the more rural situations to bring traffic information, camera, data to be able to effectively work with traffic and improve safety throughout the system. So what they did at the University of Washington is that they used computer vision, sensor fusion, edge technology, and artificial intelligence to be able to quantify and address safety overall into one system. Why that's important is that when you bring these different systems, let's say for instance, V2X communications, road conditioning, monitoring, vehicle systems, visibility, often what you're having is different sensors in different places that really make it difficult to aggregate the data into a constant database, because some of these systems, they're different locations, they may be collected in different time increments, for instance, and it really becomes difficult in terms of how you process that data. You bring them into a system from different locations, there needs to be a lot of pre-processing before you can get information out. When you use a singular device that has the capacity to do all this information gathering together, it's much cheaper, it's much more effective. The systems and the algorithms work in a much more effective and efficient manner. And that's one of the beauties that you have with this innovative technology, particularly as you move to V2X type of communications with connected and autonomous vehicles and connected automated transportation. So the idea here is just showing you that we can become much more effective in providing information out. So what we're using these systems for, and it's going to be tested in Norway, is that by bringing information, effectively being able to look at the information and then derive solutions from it, we can then affect information to a road user through a cell phone. We could change, for instance, arterial systems, or we could change information systems effectively, or even provide more information to other systems that we may have. For instance, right now, the state of Washington communicates with a lot of our cities by providing information back and forth. So the city could be providing information to DOT, and DOT could be providing it to the city. So this application is what we're seeing being done in Norway. The idea is the MUS system will be able to detect incident and send warning to show travel time reliability. And essentially why this is necessary is that these vehicles from Norway are moving from one area through Russia to be able to transport goods and services. And so temperature and humidity, for instance, is very important to them as well. So a really good application in a very rural situation to be able to provide transportation information in a way that really hasn't been done before. And what this is showing you is the system essentially automatically using the video detection that it has to be able to define the road surface. So you can see here in this slide, it's a progressive type analysis. So here, very little information on the road. The second set of slides, both in daytime and at night, a little bit more information. And then in this third bottom slide here, you can see that it's done a very good job of defining the road surface. Being able to do that saves money because you're not having to go out and survey an area to be able to know where the road surface is. The system's doing it for you. We were able to train the system essentially using information from the state of Washington. So that went through an artificial intelligence training set. And essentially this is where some of the information came from. Washington is a state that on one side is very rainy, on the central portion, mountainous areas, very snowy, and on the eastern portion of the state, a much more desert sort of condition where it's dry in the summer and snow in the winters. And here is an application that I think is also very innovative, in that it's reducing the data set. So the slides to the left, basically, there's two algorithms that are running at the same time. The first one is looking for vehicles. And once it identifies a vehicle, essentially will then run an AI for vehicle detection. So you can see here on the right slides that vehicles are being detected by the type of vehicles that they are. It's done a very good job, effective in identification. And so again, a good use of vehicle tech, or the MUS technology in situations that many DOTs face throughout the world. I want to then drop down into what we're seeing from a local application. Now, one thing that I really want to point out is that in the States, we see a lot of what's called strategic highway safety plans. We see it both in, Dr. Wang talked about this earlier. We have planning documents that are used for us to determine how we're going to approach safety. And where we approach safety is different depending on what type of jurisdiction we are. When you look at the high level jurisdictions, the state, we're generally looking at the interstate system, the higher class roadways, and our strategic highway safety plans will be oriented that way. At the local level, there's much more orientation towards collector streets, where we have a lot more pedestrian interaction and those type of activities. And here we can say that the city of Bellevue has Vision Zero. The state of Washington has what's called Target Zero. So these strategic plans are very, very important to us overall. Now, when we looked at what was happening within Bellevue, Bellevue originally looked at safety in terms of what I might call reactive safety. So they looked at things after crashes had occurred, an ad hoc system. They took information from the police systems, essentially, and didn't really think, if we're trying to get to a zero type of system, to be reactive means that there has to be fatal and serious crashes before you do something. So wouldn't it be better to really focus on a conflict-based sort of system? So that's a different sort of mindset, but that proactive approach is something that is something that we see from PIARC as well as SACE systems, that we really want to see people move towards a much more proactive way of looking at things. Get out there, address the fatals and serious before they happen. So what this slide is basically showing you is an application of AI, the ability to take cloud computing information to do, in this case, identification of vehicles and pedestrians. A very effective tool from a video analytics point of view. Now, Bellevue wanted to bring this system to them, and so they entered into a partnership between the City of Bellevue, Together for Safer Roads, Brisk Synergies, and the University of Washington. Another thing that I'd point out is that many of us at the DOTs, as well as the local agencies, do a lot of partnerships with their local universities. And it's not always just the universities within a state, but there's typically consortiums that we can pull from specific expertise based on what we need to be able to do within the system. So here they were looking at network screening. They wanted to look at surrogate traffic measures to provide dashboards and to countermeasure recommendations. So here I can show you the object classification. So just really quickly, you can see that the video system that they have in place, the video analytics, does a very good job of being able to identify vehicles, the type of vehicle, and the differing type of systems. You can see here this maneuver was a legal maneuver, important from a safety perspective to be able to identify that. So here I want to show you something very particular. So you can see here up that there was a number of pedestrians that walked out in the middle of the, that were crossing, but the vehicle at the same time conflicted. And that conflict came up with a severity score. And if I can go back just for a second here, these pedestrians with this vehicle And you can see that there was a severity score calculation up here on the left-hand side. Why is that important? Because what they did is they built an algorithm into their approach essentially to come up with what's called a conflict proximity. So a post-encroachment time that said, if vehicles are crossing and conflicting, that is important for us to know to be able to do a calculation in terms of safety. So using that conflict proximity plus essentially what that conflict was with, for instance, by speed, the road user type, the mass differential, the first to arrive at the conflict and conflict angle. So if you look at this, you'll see similarities with the safe system approach in that they're looking at essentially the forces that might be attributed to a given individual road user in terms of what the potential outcome might be from a severity perspective. So a higher severity score essentially tells you that it's likely a conflict with a pedestrian where you might not have that with a vehicle-to-vehicle conflict in a low-speed situation. The other thing that was important is that they have effective dashboard. And so here I'll go ahead and bring up a dashboard. Now, this is being able to take a look at a system overall to drop down at different levels within that system to be able to do an analysis. So here what they're going to show is essentially, look, I want to know the traffic volumes at a given location. That's what this is showing. I want to know a specific instance where there was a potential conflict. So what they're doing is dropping down to that level to try to gather information. Now here what it's showing you is essentially, I may want to know at that given intersection, what type of conflicts are occurring, when are they occurring, how often are they occurring, and how severe are those conflicts? Why is that important? Because I can use that information in terms of being able to come up with, what do I need to do? What are the most severe locations on my network, and how can I address those locations? And so the rest of the detail, you can come down and take a look at any individual event. There you can see that a conflict occurred. And you can also get information, for instance, the traffic volumes, as I've suggested before, the speed differentials, the quantification, the mix of vehicles in terms of what is occurring out in the field. So in this case, about 90% vehicles and 10% pedestrians. Now, why is this important? Again, what they're trying to do is get at the contributing factors to crashes so that they can effectively make solutions, essentially, in what they do. So Dr. Wang also presented information on the 4 E's, the 5 E's of safety, in which countermeasure selection, whether we put enforcement out in the field to be able to affect behavioral change or do some type of infrastructure improvement, is typically very important for us. And when you get to those behavioral levels, they wanted to be able to see essentially what the behaviors were. So using video analytics, you'll see here that what we're going to show is a conflict at this location right here between vehicles and pedestrians. And you can see the pedestrian reaching out and hitting the vehicle. Not an unusual situation in cities, but one that's important to identify. Here is a not granting right of way. So this, remember, this is a system identifying these for the agency to be, and the agency using this information then to select countermeasures overall. And I've said that a number of different times, but there you can see the conflict. So if a location that may be having a lot of not granting right of way may use a protected arrow to help reduce that situation overall. Now here is a speeding slide. Essentially speeds occur. And what I'm going to show you is a location where it's a 35-mile-an-hour situation, and they're seeing speeds in excess of 55 miles an hour. So from a perspective of kilometers per hour, anywhere between 24 to 32 kilometers per hour over in terms of speed. So again, this is just looking at speed analysis. I can look at any one given event, select that event, and see from 3 different views what's happening in that specific location. So here, the vehicle 55 miles an hour. So again, going at a very high rate of speed on a low speed environment. And they can drop down and get more details. So that is my presentation. And I hope you enjoyed the case studies, and they've worked very well in the state of Washington as well as throughout Florida and other locations in the US.
John, thank you very much again for the great presentation and the material provided here. And thank you for also providing your contact information there. In the interest of time, I am going to introduce our two new next speakers at the same time. We have Harald Mosbrook, which is a Vice President for RMS Region of Europe. And Christoph Berchtel, Vice President for Products and Technology from the ITS division of SUARCO, both of them from SUARCO, on behalf of our partner organization, IRF, who are going to give us a presentation on innovating road safety management, regulatory frameworks, and practice in Europe. With that, let me turn it over, please.
Thank you, Christos. Just a short question. Are you going to share the screen or shall I do that?
We can have James share the screen if that is easier.
Okay, then let's do it like that.
James?
Sorry, I didn't think we have Harold's.
Okay, then Harold,
I'm already on it. Normally you should see that now. Can you confirm?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Harald. Thanks for the introduction. And together with my colleague Christoph, we are going to present you this afternoon some regulatory work from Europe. We shared the presentation, so I will start with more the policy program and what's going on, and Christoph from the ITS division is going to give you then more practical examples. So let's get started. Why we do have to act here in Europe. Still, we are facing 25,000 fatalities every year here in Europe. Even that's an improvement when we are comparing with a decade ago. But as you can see as well, it was just a quick win in the first 3 years, while the last 7 years, there was not a significant improvement. 49 fatalities in comparison with a global of 174 is, of course, on a global scale, a quite good one, but still 135,000 serious injuries and 120 billion per year socio-economic costs for these accidents certainly resulted into the new road safety policy framework here in Europe. The kickoff meeting for that next decade, so to say, was in the declaration of a letter by the Council of by the European Council. This is the table of all European premier ministers, and the decision and the approach how to tackle the next decade was a combination of the further improvements of the vehicle technology, which we've heard already several times today, but in combination with the traditional ones, so the typical triangle, the framework of traffic safety, the vehicle, the infrastructure, and the driver. So within this work, the European Commission, which was asked by the European Council, they released last year 2 regulations. The first one was the General Safety Regulation that relates only to vehicles. And the second one is about the Road Infrastructure Safety Management Directive, which is dealing with everything regarding the infrastructure. And now I'm going to use just a few words to these 2 regulations. The first one, the General Safety Regulation, and this is something which you really have to think about. It is not a recommendation, or this is something which eventually will come in Europe. No, it is by fact that by 2022, all new types of vehicles have to comply with this new regulation. That is mandatory. This is a law. And by 2024, all new registered vehicles has to comply. And what does this mean? Just for a few examples. So by 2024, all vehicles in Europe has to have a lane keeping system. They have to have improved seat belts, intelligent speed assistance, reversing camera, advanced emergency braking, and. So a lot of things which becomes mandatory in Europe by 2024. And the second thing, that was the revision of a directive. This is the Road Infrastructure Directive. It's a revision, as it is stated, is aiming into three main directions. The first one, it's a scope extension. While so far it was only related with the trans-European networks, now the European Commission was encouraging the member states that it's not only the trans-European networks and European Union funded roads, but of course all national motorways and the primary roads. So it's already a much larger scale. The second one is about a network-wide road safety assessment. It's the task, and it becomes mandatory for the member states to evaluate their road network and to classify them, to ensure a follow-up, target inspections, and on. There's a lot of work coming ahead for the member states in the next years in order to improve safety on the infrastructure. And the third thing, which is now new, there are enhancing provisions, which comes more or less out of the discussion always with connected automated vehicles, to consider more vulnerable road users, especially road marking and signs, because whenever you are talking about automated vehicle and infrastructure, it will take you not longer than 10 minutes to reach the point where you will talk about road markings. It's about as well information and transparency and some additional milestones and reporting from the member states back to the European Commission. How is the timetable for all these things? Unfortunately, there is for at least 6 months delay, because work on EGRIS, the expert group on to improve traffic infrastructure related with road markings and traffic signs, should have started their work in June last year. But due to all the pandemic situation, travel restrictions, and so on and so forth, unfortunately, there is a delay for at least of 6 months. But nevertheless, the goal now is by the end of this year that this expert group shall present to the European Commission, to the European Council, some proposals on how road infrastructure, specifically lane markings and traffic signs, shall be adopted in order to support connected automated vehicles for the best, to increase the reliability and to increase the safety. And if you see, the timetable is going on up to 2027. So there is a lot of work ahead. And actually there is as well a lot of test sites all over in Europe going on. It would be impossible to bring all of those test sites here into this presentation, but just here on that slide, and the presentations anyhow will be public, and you can check it out. It's only from Germany, and in Germany, of course, might be of interest because it's still a very strong automotive industry, and that kind of test fields where they are going to test the interaction between all the motor vehicles, all the OEMs, and the infrastructure on several kind of infrastructure type might become very interesting for the one of you. And in case if either you're going to check it out directly or you're going to contact us, and we will put you on the right place with the people. But to sum that up would be by far too much. I mentioned already something before, that whenever you are talking about infrastructure and automated vehicle, you will reach very fast the topic of lane markings. And here is just one slide, which was a project done recently by my company, who is paying still my bills, and ZKW, which is an automotive tier 1 supplier. Whereas we took 8 different kind of road marking systems, from very low performing, meaning that we simulated a used paint, almost worn out paint, with up to very high-end road marking, so the best performing road marking systems, put them with 3 cameras, 8 LiDAR sensors under 24 different weather conditions simulations in the biggest and largest white climate tunnel, which is in Vienna. And you can imagine that we had a lot of data out of it, or especially ZKW had a lot of data out to find out what kind of systems, road lane markings are working how, and how can be perceived by the different kind of sensors. And even as well, it's hundreds of thousands of data, but a summary out of it, it doesn't matter if it was about cameras or it was about the LiDAR sensors. It was always that high retroreflective road markings with a sufficient contrast ratio, and especially with a high wet visibility, was supporting, doesn't matter if it was a camera or LiDARs, very tremendously, and were helping the sensors in order to perceive lane markings and to keep the car in lane. And as far as I know, I guess I will hand over now to my colleague, to Christoph, who is dealing much more in all the IT regulations. Christoph, you're there?
Yeah, thank you, Harald, for the passover. Now I want to overtake the road safety into the intelligent traffic systems world, where we are talking about connected ITS or connected cooperative automated mobility, CCAM. And we want to have a look at the European CCAM regulations or CITS regulations from a historical point of view too. So the European Commission decided in 2014 to take a more prominent role in the deployment of connected driving by setting up a CITS deployment platform. Through this, they positioned a common vision all over Europe how to deal in the future with the CITS platform. In 2016, a European strategy was published for cooperative intelligent transport systems, a milestone towards cooperative and connected automated mobility. That was, so to say, the common strategy and mission of the European countries to have a common perspective. In 2016, the member states and the Commission launched the C-Roads platform to link the CITS deployment activities to jointly develop and share technical specifications and to verify interoperability through cross-site testing. This is actually bringing the whole mission vision on the street into projects. Here are to name some projects from Netherlands, Austria, Germany with Hessen, Italy, Trento, or in Greece, Hungary. And all these projects exchanged information and worked on the same standards to share information and to commonly make a step forward. Since March 2019, the European Commission added a delegate regulation. The purpose of it was to create a minimal legal requirement for interoperability for CITS and to enable large-scale deployments. So they made actually a certainty through legal regulations through the directive to enable the authorities to already tender larger projects. When we have a look at this is from the vision over the strategy and mission, over bringing it over into project life, and then building a common platform with a certainty by legal regulations established over the last 6 years by the EU. Harald? So having a look on the working groups and the standardization activities, CCAM is extremely complex because you have to think about the different parties who are dealing here together. This is from the cities, the car manufacturers, the ITS companies, the IT companies like Google, TomTom, different industries who are working together to make it happen. And that's why in the European Union, we have very active standardization communities and stakeholder groups. Here to name some, first of all, the European Telecommunication Standards Institute, the ETSI, which is looking from the perspective of communication on the working groups with the communication layer, the communication mobile applications, vehicle to vehicle perspective, the message telegrams CAM and DIN. CAM means the cooperative awareness message, which is actually keeping the alive message of the vehicle on a periodical meter, or the DENM with a decentralized environmental notification message, which is the information about events and roadworks, for example. From a application level, the European Committee for Standardization established working groups on the infrastructure application, the architecture, and the message telegrams. Here to mention the SPAT, the MAP, and the IVI. SPAT is the signal phase and time message, which is actually the digital signal message. The map is the map of the intersection, or the in-vehicle information to mention, which is actually the variable message sign information on the navigation system in the car, for example. Relevant from road marking systems is the European Committee for Standardization, which is the infrastructure layer, where the infrastructure is in main focus, and here to mention the horizontal road signs and the road interaction. Besides that, there are minor mirror committees on national levels, and not last but not least to mention the European Road Federation with several working groups also. Harald? Now, when we look at how the regulations turned out into solutions in the last 16 years, we see a lot of different programs. SWACO actually was part of most of these research-funded projects in the last 16 years. And you see on the left side the different focuses of these working groups, like the evolution of traffic management, the communication focus, the road infrastructure focus, or the field of highly automated solutions. And I brought this together with the hype cycle from Gartner to give you also a perspective about the innovations behind of it. And you see there is first a new technology coming on in the area, and then there is a mega hype about it, but it's not already the plateau of productivity. So there comes first of all a valley of disillusionment. And here is to mention that the ministries of Netherlands, Germany, and Austria signed a protocol for standardization about 2014, which is here on the low level of the valley of disillusionment, the cooperative ITS corridor program, and that gave it a new push. And when you now look also on the technology issues like collaborative traffic management, or V2X, vehicle to infrastructure, vehicle to car communication, and 5G, you see that with 21, 25, now in the next years, we are really in the plateau of productivity, and these kind of programs are coming to real solutions in the field. Harald? Next slide gives you an overview about solutions connected with the infrastructure. First of all, to mention the road marking system Harald explained, then the traffic management system with a central management system, and the signs and signals and the controllers in the field, together with the traffic light assist. The traffic light assist solution is something where you can see in the car how fast you drive to get the green light, so drive faster, drive slower, and assistance to get the green light. Then we have port control systems, we have passenger information systems on applications or on signs. We have public transport solutions from control centers over fleet management and onboard units with passenger counting and video surveillance, cloud-based priority, especially for emergency vehicles or public transport vehicles or VIPs, and cycle solutions, which gives you a better idea about the situation of cycling in your city. We have the tunnel and highway solutions for tunnel safety, and the weight in motion. In the parking area, we are talking about parking apps or parking guidance systems. And not by accident, SWACO is covering 95% of these solutions in the ITS environment, and is having here larger projects cross over the world. Harald? How the regulation turns out in solutions, and now specifically on use cases. This is divided in different areas. So we have the dangerous location notification by road and local with the accident zone, for example, the traffic jam ahead, the stationary vehicle, the weather condition warning, or the animal or person on the road, the obstacle on the road warning, etc. On the intersection itself, we have the green light optimal speed advisory, the traffic light prioritization, as I mentioned it already, the signal phase and timing information, and the emergency vehicle priority, for example. In the car, in the vehicles, there are use cases like dynamic speed limit information, embedded VMS, also variable message signs informations, dynamic lane management. We heard about the shoulder story before, our signage information. And on the location side, on roadworks working side, we have the lane closure, the road works, the winter maintenance, also seen in the presentation before, which are use cases on the road. Another area new is coming up with the data use cases. So we're collecting more and more data in the areas. We heard also about that already through different sensors and detectors. So the vehicle data collection, the event data collections, which will lead us in the future as a use case of incident management in the area of traffic or travel. Harald? Yeah, thank you for your attention, but there is one slide also after this. So thank you for listening. Here, a short overview of many R&D projects across the European community. It's really a large area of different funded projects on different levels for finding new technology solutions and use cases and bringing it all together. And as we saw in the hype cycle of Gartner, the time is now right. Thank you very much.
非常感谢 Howard 跟 Crystal。
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation and sharing. Thank you, Howard, and thank you, Christoph. Now, I would like to leave the Q&A in the very end of my part. Now, please allow me to introduce the next speaker, Mr. Dong Haishi, who is the head of Designated Driving Department, CTO of Urban Transport and Service Business Group of DD. Mr. Shi is a graduate of Beijing University of Post and Telecommunications, and he has been a rich experience in intelligent hardware, mobile internet technology, architecture, and product technology. And today, Mr. Shi will give us a presentation on the data open program of DD as well as the technology. Now, Mr. Shi, the floor is yours.
Hi, 大家好，我是滴滴出行代驾事业部总经理，也是城市运输与服务技术事业群的技术负责人。我今天给大家分享一下，我们在交通出行安全领域里面所做的一些工作和研究。首先，我们来看一组数据。据统计，2018年。
Some statistics shows that in year 2018, there are about 1.35 million people dying from the road traffic-related conditions. On a daily basis, there is 3,700 people dying. Every 24 seconds, there is one life being lost to road safety. So think about any potential risk will result in the accident, which results in death tolls. So let me walk you through a video clip to let you know that. So what DD has been up to in terms of providing road safety. Well, I remember riding across some, pitfalls. Unfortunately, I fell over. Unfortunately, I got a huge force against the bones here, so it's really painful. And then I got the telephone call from the operator let me know where is the most nearby hospital, and the operator is calling me and take me to hospital to do some physical checkup. And the DD has this security and safety alarm system, which is making my life so much more safer than before, so that my family members can rest assured that I will be in good hands. Every day I'm going to remind him that be mindful of the safety, don't play with your phones as you're traveling. So I understand my wife is a hardworking mom. She is taking good care of my children. So that's why I would like to remind you to become super mindful of safety as you're traveling, so that you can have a safe journey and take yourself back to your home safe and sound. Thank you.
除了视频中的小水坑，但实际
So
我们在
it's
真
a
实的路面
small
上面有各种
pitfall
类
in
似
the
的这
video,
种
but
海
as
损路
you're
面和
traveling
财
on
富
the
路面。
road, there are a
当
lot
我
of
们如果骑
different
行到这样
dangers,
路面上
hidden
面，一
dangers
不小
ahead
心
of
就会
it.
出现
So
摔倒的情况，
sometimes all
导
of a
致一
sudden
些
you will trip
安
over,
全事故。
and then there will be a
那么
lot
我
of
们是
road
如何
safety
去识别
related
我们的摔
accidents.
倒行
But
为的呢？
how do you
在我
identify
们的体系
those
里面
falling
包含了
down
通过
behavior
硬
of the
件采
people?
集实
So
时
in
数
our
据，
system,
加
so
上
we
我
have
们的算法
hardware
模
to
型能
collect the
力，以及
real-time
云端的
data.
一个预
We
警识
have
别
the
和质量客服，
algorithm at the same
全
time.
方
We
位
have the
三位一
cloud
体
and the
来
smart
进行我们的安
sales
全干预，
customer service
识
as
别
well.
保
So
护我
all
们的
three in
出
one
行
to
安
do
全。
the intervention to make
我们
sure
内
that we
部
can
把
become
这
the
个项目
custodian
叫做
of
守
your
夜人救
mobility
助计
safety.
划。
So we call
我
it the
们一
Night
代通过我
Watch,
们的摔倒
like a
模型和
Night
大
Watch
数据，
custodian
检测
program.
到用户
So
有
we are
摔倒
using the
行
big
为，
data to
第
generate
一
a
时间会
model
触
to
发我们智能
identify
客
who
服
is
进
falling
行
over,
万呼，
and
确
immediately
认
we're
用
going
户是
to
否在处理危
trigger
险场
the
景，
alert and
同
try to
时客
call
服也
back
是
the
会及
customer
时电
to
话过
check
去，
with them whether they have
提
fallen
供
over,
相应的
and
帮
then
助
we are
和
going to call them to see if they need any
嗯
help
干
at
预流
all.
程。
And then we're going to do
如
some
果对一些
intervention
特别
accordingly
危
as
险的一些
well.
case，
So in
我们
case
会
of
在
some
30 分钟之
cases
内
within
派出我们
short
的
notice
区
of
域安全
per
员
minute,
到
we
现
are
场
going
进
to
行
send
紧急
the
救助。
location
这就是我
specific,
们一个
I
包含
mean,
了线上和线
people
下
to
的整体
dispatch
的
to
一
the
个守
site
夜人
to
计划，确
rescue
保
those
我们的
people
用
in
户
trouble in
安
danger.
全，
So this
用
is
户和司机安全。
something we have to make sure that we ensure the
那
road
么我们的
safety
守夜人做到
for
了
the
骑
travelers
行
and the
事后的
drivers as
识别
well.
高位识
So
别和及
we
时
can do
干预，
two
来
things.
减
We
少一些
can
伤亡
do the
事
fall
故。
detection
那
and
同时我
the
们
pre-warning
也
as
在实
well.
际的
At the same
平台
time,
上面累积了
in
大量的
our
真实骑
real-time
行数据，
platform, we have
模
got a
型
lot of
会
real
通过
use
识别
data. So our
我
model is going to
通过模型
identify,
会通过我们对数据的处理，
say,
识别
based
到一
on our
些高
processing
危
of the
的一
data,
些
the
路段，
model will be
我们
trained
对
to
这些有
identify
坑
what are
啊，
the
有风
risky
险的一
sections
些
of
隐
roads,
患路
what are the
段，
typical
会及
pitfalls,
时
what
及时
about
去
the
对用
road
户进行
sections
提醒，
with a lot of hidden risks.
然后减
Then
少
we're
了这
going to
个
do
事
the
故的发
timely
生。
warning for the clients so that actually the users of the system is
根
going
据
to have
根据我们滴滴
minimize the
安全预警
exposure
系统的统
to
计，
troubles on the road.
2019 年
So
到
based on our
2020年
statistics,
9月
so
这一段时间之
by
内，我
the
们一共累
September
计了
2020,
390
for
人，
the year past that, we have
确保了
a
0人
total
的
of
骑行
390 people
生命
being
丧
helped by our
失。
systems,
我
and
们的这
due
个
to
救
our
助，
system, there is
我
a
们这个救
zero
助既包
death
含了
toll.
很多
So
看不清路
our
面，
roadside
在
rescue
骑
includes a
行
lot
的
of
时候
things
摔倒
saying
在路
if
上的
you
师
don't have a
傅，
vision
代驾师
for
傅
what's ahead of
也救
you
助
as you're
过
riding on the
醉酒
road,
骑行
for the
躺在大
agency
马路边
drivers
上的电单车用户，
sometimes
这就
actually
是我们作为滴
they are
滴
going to
我
get
们
an
的初
order,
心，
emergency order
像
from
保护家
someone
人一
who is
样
pulled
保
over
护
or
司乘安
over
全。
the side of the road because they are so drunk.
刚刚我
So
们提到的
we are
滴
just
滴
like
安
our
全预警
family
系统，
members
只
taking
是
care
提及
of
了
your
在滴滴
safety.
代驾和滴滴共享
Just
电单
now,
车
I
业务线的
only
大规模应
mentioned
用。
that the DD
那在深
agency
入
and
介绍我
the
们滴滴安全科技之前，
bicycle business
我简
unit,
单给大
but
家
prior
介
to
绍一下滴滴的
doing a deep
整体
dive
情况。
into our technical prowess, I'm going
我
to
们
walk
是一
you
个全
through
球
what
的
DD
移
is
动出
about.
行和服务
So
平
we
台。
are a global
我们一共有
mobility and
5.5
service
亿注册
provider.
用
We
户，
have a registered
提供
user
了包
of
括
about
快车啊、专车啊、
550
拼
million.
车、
We provide
代驾
快车
等出行业务，
and
还包括
carpooling and
了
agency
外
driving and
卖、
other mobility
货
services,
运、
takeaway
一些金融
food
相
and
关的一
cargo
些
transportation
服务
and a
业
lot
务。
of related financial
我们
services,
每年
etc.
平台上面有
On
数
a
千万
yearly
车主
basis,
及
you
司
can
机
see
在上
that
面获得
actually
灵活
we
就
have
业和收入的机会。
dozens of
每
millions
年
of
也运输了
drivers
大
and
概
riders on
100亿
system.
人
Every
次。
year, we are going to handle a
我们的
passenger
业务基
traffic
本上
of
呢涵
about
盖
10
到
billion people.
全
Our
球
business is
各
going to
个地
cover
方，
all over the
从
nations,
拉美
everywhere
到
from
我
Latin
们
America
的
all
东
the
南亚、
way
欧
through
洲等等
Southeast
都有我们
Asia,
的业务
through
部署
Europe,
地点。
everywhere we have our local presence.
在我们的整个滴滴出行平台上面，
So on
积
our
累了
DD
大量的一些出行数
出行
据。
platform, we have
左
built up
侧、左
huge
上侧
reservoir
是
of
我们
data
2017
for
年到
mobility.
2019
So on
年
the upper
国内
left,
出行
so
需求的变化情
between
况。
the year
左下是
2017,
墨西哥城
2019,
一
just the
天
mapping
24
of
小
the
时的出
trending
行
data
日
and
历图。
changes and the heat map
我们每天平台
of
上
Mexico
面
City
日
for
增
mobility
的
is below
原
that.
始轨迹
On
数
our
据
platform,
超过了
every
106
year, so you can
TB，
see that we have
相当于
106
21,400
additional TB
部
level of
5G 大
data
小的蓝
every
光
year.
电影。
So this is
我们每
equivalent to
天
about,
处理的
for
数据也超
example,
过了
like
4,875 TB。
4,875
我们
plus
每日路
TB
径规
every
划
year,
请求
equivalent to
超过
about 20 million
400
pieces
亿
of
次，
movies. And every
将
year
近
we are going to
2778
deal
万
with
次
40
每分
billion
钟，
times of
峰值的时候
route
处理超
requests per
过
day.
200 万
So
次
at the peak
路径
level,
规
we
划
have handled
每
about
分
2
钟每
million
秒。
times per
我
second.
们的
route
定位
planning.
每
So
天
if
也
you
有
look
大
at
概
our
700亿
positioning,
次，
so
峰值是
we
每秒
help
处
to
理大
position
概
about
400万次
70
的定
billion
位。
every year. At the peak, we have handled per second about 4
刚
million
才我
different
们
navigation
演示
positioning
的只是滴
services.
滴安全体系里面非常小的
Just
一
now,
部
I only
分。
give you
那整个池滴
I
滴
mean,
安全
tip
体
of
系
the
里包
iceberg
含
of
了
what our
行前、
DDSA
行
is
中、
capable
行
of
后都有
pre-trip,
相应的一些
during the
规
trip,
划。
and after the
比如
trip.
说
We
行
have
前我们有
relevant
司机
planning
诊
model.
录、司机
For
教
after
育和
trip,
开
we
道
have
库
the
等等。行
background
中我
check,
们有行为
security
识别
check,
和场景识
driver
别，
education,
干
and
预
order
行程中的安
dispatchment,
全。
and during the travel,
行后
we
我
have
们
some
也有
interventions
及时
to
的
make
事
sure
故
that
处
you
理
are
和地方
safer
处
as
置
you are
等等
traveling.
来及时
And
开展
after the
营
trip,
救和
we
处
have
置。
some actually immediate rescue efforts to make
刚
sure
刚
that
我们
when you
讲到
need
的
the
更
rescue
多是我
efforts,
们
we
一
are
些
there, always ready there
骑
for
行安
you.
全的一
Just
些
now, I
一
was
些行
putting
为。
you through
那
some
除
of
去
the
前面提
behaviors
到
or
的，我
measures we have
们
taken in
还
order
有
to
很多
make sure
像
that
超速
you have
啊
a better
和危险
ride
驾
and
行为
safer
啊、高
ride.
危路口的一
There are
些相关的
speeding
一些实
drive,
例
speed
我
drive,
向
and
以
also
下
a
想
lot
做一
of
些展
dangerous
示。
driving behaviors or driving at very
在
dangerous
行程中，
crossroads and
首先
intersections.
是我
I'm going to
们
do a
对于
demo
一
for
些高
you.
危场景，
First of
包括我
all,
们安全
for
带的
some
提
dangerous
醒。
driving behavior, we are going to give you some safety escalation to remind you. Hi, I'm Xiaoping. It turns out that actually you have to fasten your safety belt because you are going to ask for a long travel.
安全
Please
带
be
也是生命
mindful
带。
of the
滴
riding
滴在
safety.
行程
So
开始
safety
前和
belt
行程
is
中，
ensuring your safety
均
is
会语
your
音提示提醒
bloodline.
安全带。
So we are
前后
trying to
把
remind people
通过
to
这样的
fasten your
提
safety
醒，我
belt as
们
you are traveling
前
and
后排
riding
的
on
安
the
全带
car. So we are reminding people that no matter you
佩
are
戴
front
力
seater or
有
back
了显
seater,
著
you
的
have
提
to
高。
actually buckle yourself up by putting on the safety belt so that you have a heightened awareness of safety. So
这
now
是
you're
应用
speeding
我
too
们的
fast.
能
Please
力。
slow down a
我
little
们
bit.
通过我
So
们
this is
传
a
感器
very
检
strong
测，实
capability.
时
We are
对
trying
比
to use our
行驶
sensoring
中的
system
路
to have a
段
real-time
安全速度，
comparison
对
of
车速
the
过快
what
的
is
车
the
辆下发语
maximum
音播报和提
allowable
醒。
safe traveling speed, so
这个
that we
通
are
过
going
这
to
种
use
方
our
式，我们
voice
也显著干预
reminders
了
to
车
let you
速，
know if you're
能
driving
够
too
显
fast.
著
And that
降
way
低
we can
交通
intervene
安全
with
的隐患。
things like, for example,
对于
speed
代驾品
driving
业
to
务，我们
minimize
行
the
程后
danger
还会给出
exposure
相应的
to the
分享评估卡，
dangerous or I
通过
mean
这个评估卡
unsafe
提醒
way
司
of
机
driving. So we are trying to have this
做好
evaluation
做好安
scorecard
全，
to try to remind the
减少
drivers
事故发生的
that
概
they
率。
need to be mindful of all the safety measures they need to take in order to reduce the chance and the incidences of unsafe driving. So I'm
除了我
Dapeng,
们
so
行
I'm
程的
going
干
to
预，我
remind
们
you
在
that
每一个
you're
行
up
程以
for a long
后，
journey.
也会对危
So
险驾驶行
during
为
the
进
trip,
行
we
识
have
别
some
和评
intervention,
估。
and after trip, we
我
are
们会
going
结
to
合
do some
传
assessment
感器
for the
GPS
dangerous driving
等速
behaviors.
识别司机的驾
Based
驶
on
行
some
为，对
GPS,
每一
we're going
单
to
进行
identify
行
the
为的
driving
评估。
behaviors of the
每单
driver.
结
For
束
every
后
order, we are
会
going
下发
to
给
analyze your
下发
driving
相应的风
pattern
险
and
评估卡，
behavior,
并
and then we will
进
give
行
you a
相应的管
scorecard
控。
analysis of
通过这
driving
个方
pattern
式，我们
and
能
try to
够
manage you
显
accordingly
著
based
降
on your
低
performance. By using that way, we can significantly reduce. Sorry, the speaker just stopped talking. Interpretation services will come back when he continued his talking.
对，我们通过每次对司机的驾驶行为进行一
So
个全面评估，
after the
并
trip,
进
we are
行
going to do
相应的一
like
些
full
管理，
dimensional
能够
evaluation of the
为
driving
司机的
behaviors of
整体的
drivers
事
and
故
do some management of them
降发生
accordingly. So as a
做出
result
更
of
多的一
that,
些
we can
管理。
contribute more to manage the system in a way that will minimize the chances of the drivers
对于这些
using
相应的高危
dangerous
路口，
driving
我们也
behavior to
会进
result
行
in
及时
the
的
road
检测
unfortunate
干预。
incidences.
滴滴数据
So
平
we're
台上
trying
累
to
积
do
了很
some
多
slow intervention at
相对
high-risk
动态的一
intersections
些
as
高
well.
危
The
路口的一
system
些信
is
息。
trying to
然后
provide
当我
some
们的
information about relatively
驾驶人
risky
经过最高
crossroads. So when the driver is passing through the danger zone at a crossroads, our sensory system will directly detect his real traveling speed. At the same time, it timely remind the drivers for the speeding car to try to slow down a little bit. So right ahead of you, there is accident-prone area. Please slow down yourself a little bit. So that's kind of a reminder and intervention. So by using that mean, it turns out that when the driver is passing through dangerous crossroads, so the system works perfectly and effectively to minimize the chances of them to still keep on with their dangerous driving behavior. And with that, I'm finished my demo for what we have done for the safety. So actually, between January and November 2020, so for example, the car hailing resulted, casualty related to that is declining by 35% year on year. We are always on the road to minimize road safety related incidents. So This is
包括了
the
行前
work
预
we
防
have
啊、伤
done
虫保护
also
啊、行
prior
为
to
处置。
trip
但是
prevention.
这些每一
Trip
步
we can
工
do
作
some
都
protection.
是
Post trip
离
we
不开
can
数据
do some
支持。
assessment as well.
我们
But
滴
this
滴
is
在
not
平台上也
possible
累积
without
了
the
很
data
多，
because
包括
on the
GPS、
platform of data,
RMU、地
RMU,
图、事故
DDS,
数
and
据、
the
图
map,
像数据
and
等一些
also the
基础的
crash
交通数
data,
据。
video
我
data,
们也希
and
望
also
把
the
这些数
basic
据透明以
fundamental
后，
traffic related
联
data.
合学
We
界
hope
和
that
研究
hope
界
that
一
we
起
can
在
open
交
that
通
up
安全方
so
向
that
进
people
行
have visibility into
前
that,
沿
so
研
that
究，
actually we can
推
enable
进交通
the
领域的
like-minded
科
people
研
to
发
do
展。
some co-research
啊，
for road safety, so that
那
we
今
can
天那大家
blaze
都
the
知道
trail
滴滴
and
盖亚数
extend
据
the
开放计划
frontier
啊，今
of the
天我
road
们
safety
也
related research.
正式发
We
布
are
我们的
opening
滴
up
滴
our
驾驶
big
行为数
data
据集。
today. This is the official
我们
launch
抽
of
取了
our
2020 年
DD
10
driving
月
behavior
期
data
间
set.
平台
And
上司
then
机的一些基础数据信
So we
息，
are trying
以
to
及
get
他们的
some
一些驾驶
basic
行为
data
数
from
据，
the
包括了
platform
加速
ever since
度、陀
October
螺仪、磁力
2020,
等
and
等，以
so
及 GPS 采集的相应数
accelerometer
据。
and the
我们
gyroscope,
对这些数据进行一些加密和
magnetometer.
透
So we
明
are
以
trying to
后，
get data from
形
all
成了
of
大
things
概
and
110
then
G 到
encrypt them,
120
and
G 的
then
数据。
so you can
那我
find
相
we
信这些
generate
数
data pool
据
of
可以帮助
110,
大家
220
在交通安全领
gigabits.
域的研究
So
上面
actually,
发
in
挥作
terms
用。
of
我
the
们也希望联
empowering
合
people to
科
do
研
some
界一起
road
解决交
related
通安
safety,
全
I
的
think we can contribute our best.
解决
We stand ready to work
安
together
全
with
驾驶
the
的问题。
scientific world and academician to address the issue of safe driving.
我们秉承着开放共享、协作共赢、
We
创
have
新发
always
展的理
been
念，
bearing in mind the
持续推进
philosophy
滴
of
滴的
remaining open,
特
being
色透明
collaborative,
的科
and
研
being
数据
innovative.
向
We
学界
open
开
our
放。
data in a
目
transparent
前
way.
滴滴开放了成
Offer
都、
open
西
access
安、
to
海
data from
口
the
等城市
commission,
订单
Chengdu,
轨迹数
Xi'an,
据、
and Haikou.
POI 检索数
So
据、
you have
行
open
车视
access
频
to the
数据
data.
和语音
So
数
we
据集
have a
等等，
POI review
以及
retrieval
这次
data,
驾驶行为
trajectory
数据
data,
集。
the city video
已经有
data,
来自海内外
and
的
as well,
8000
and the
多
travel
人
time index
申
data.
请，覆盖
So
了30
about
多国家和
8,000
地
different
区，以
individuals
及
made some
8000多所
applications
学校
for
和
our
科研机
access of the
构。
data covering
滴
about
滴也希望
the
联合
8,000
社会各
different
界
schools and
共
institutions
同推
from
动
30
交通
different
便利和
countries.
发展，
We hope that
出
we
行
can
更美
stand
好。
ready to
谢
make
谢大家。
your mobility a better experience. Thank you very much, everyone. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Shidonghai, for your excellent rendering. Okay, so now it's my turn to introduce to you the rundown of our panel discussion session. Now I'm supposed to become the moderator to introduce sorry, I'm not the moderator for this session, but I'm going to introduce the moderator to you. So Professor Wang is the one kicking off this panel discussion session with a presentation, who is professor from Tongji University. He's going to become the moderator for the panel discussion as well. Let me hand over the microphone to Professor Wang. Can you hear us? Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry, Professor Wang. Susanna, the audio was not really clear for me. If you can repeat the question, please.
Yeah, so this is John Melton from the US. I can say that there is a whole research program right now funded by NCHRP that is doing a series of different research topics, both operations and safety related, with connected and automated vehicles. The NCHRP program is also doing a large scale project on developing a framework for looking at connected and automated vehicles in safety under NCHRP 1791, I think is the project, which should be completed, I think, within about half a year. And if you would want to follow up, I could give you some more details to that information.
Yeah, perhaps a word to Europe. Swarco especially is involved with most of the OEMs, with Audi, with Mercedes, with VW in projects for autonomous driving, especially from the perspective infrastructure to car communication, but also autonomous driving. In these projects, it's mainly level 3, 4, and partly 5. So from an infrastructure perspective, we are already having the large tenders on the table for ASFINAG, for example, in Austria, to build the infrastructure to X environment that autonomous driving is prepared for the future, so it's future ready. And for the autonomous driving itself, as we heard from Harald Mosberg, we have these clear level 3 and 4 safety use cases, applications in the cars. So we expect over the next 5 to 10 years that this is coming more and more together.
好，感谢 Christos。Professor Wang, can you speak closer to the microphone because your sound is a little bit weak? Is it better? Can you hear me? Any comments, any questions from the audience? You're welcome to write down your questions or comments through the chat box.
access to an app where they put their own observations about safety, speeding, pedestrian crossings. And so they take that crowdsourced data together to identify what's beyond the crash data, which I think is really genius. I think they're really thinking forward. So that would be the state I would pick, would be the state of Washington or Ohio. And then for a city, I'd pick the city of Charlotte.
Okay,
Good
thank
question.
you, thank you. Yeah, I prepared several questions for you. Okay, so yeah, my second question is related to the highway safety manuals. So what will be the major change or improvement for the second version of highway safety manual compared to the first version?
Yeah, and I think that's, John knows I'm going to pass this question off to him, but I think that's a much better question for John, for John Milton.
Well, thank you very much. So there is a project ongoing to update the second edition of the safety manual. There's going to be additional information on pedestrians and bicyclists, systemic safety analysis, and there's going to be updates to pretty much all of the predictive chapters. More information coming in for roundabouts, intersections, severity-based analysis. So a lot of new analytical procedures. Human factors is going to play in a very important role in the update. And I think we're going to see a bit more about safe system and that type of approach within the manuals. It gets updated. And I'd also mentioned that the Green Book, the AASHTO Green Book, which is a guiding document for the US, is also getting updated. And a lot of the information in the Green Book will be much more performance driven than it has in the past. So that's a significant issue, I think, for anybody that is working with geometrics and safety.
Okay, yeah, thank you, John. And I also noticed that there is a new chapter from MUTCD for the autonomous vehicle related update for traffic sign.
Yes, and there's also a discussion in the MUTCD about painting for connected and automated vehicles, so widening the stripe requirements from a 4-inch stripe to a 6-inch high reflective, high build type of stripe. And I think there's a lot of discussion related to that, and its benefits both from a current safety performance, but also for the connected vehicles.
Yeah, thank you for this information. We are looking forward for the second version of highway safety manual, and particularly in Shanghai, we are almost finished all these major safety models for different type of roadways, but still it's just the basic models, and so we can learn a lot from the US highway safety manual. Okay, it seems there's no questions from audience, so I will keep asking questions. Okay, okay. My third question for Kim and John is, so you both of you mentioned the TESMO, the transportation system management and operations. So what's compared to the traditional strategies? What's the major difference what's the major difference or improvement for TESMO? Yeah, like before there is corridor management program and many other similar programs. So what's the major difference of the TESMO?
Yeah, and I can start. So I think TISMO thinks about the operations more holistically. So it's not just about moving cars. And so I think that broader perspective that TISMO is part of a broader strategy is, just much more helpful. In highway safety, we need all the partners we can get. And I think, this is true across transportation. And for a long time, each group was considered, in a separate silo, and even getting groups within an agency to talk was difficult. So for me, TISMO is a much broader look, and it brings in different perspectives, that it's not just an operational solution. and that decision to do something like my example of using the shoulder, has larger implications, definitely implications on operations, but implications on safety. It could also have implications for how we plan and design our roads if we know we're going to use those strategies. So I think for me, that's the big shift, is that, we're starting to think about things in a more connected, but I don't mean connected and autonomous. I just mean that, that all of these aspects of transportation have to function together to, really deliver the type of transportation systems that we want.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for so. Okay, John, I have a question. Since you introduced 3 new technologies here, one is a must from University of Washington, Professor Wang, and another is the real-time crash risk visualization systems from University of Central Florida, and the third one is traffic conflict analysis. So, is this just a new technology, or is has been widely applied in the US?
The information, the MUST system from the University of Washington is really, I would say, in the innovation stage. It is newer technology, and as I'd suggested, the benefit of it is that it brings all the systems into one rather than multiple systems. And I see a wide range of applications. The other work that's being done from like the University of in Florida is a relatively mature system. And Mohammed Abdel Ati was the person who developed that system for Florida. And I think the applications are excellent. So that's been out a number of different years. The system in Bellevue is, I think, relatively mature. It's been going a couple of years now. But I really like the innovations and what they're taking within that city from a safety perspective. So understanding that leading kind of in the Vision Zero sort of methodology, being much more responsive to pedestrian needs and bicyclist needs, I think it's going to go a long way to helping reduce the fatal and serious crashes for that city. And I think it's leading other cities within the US to look at video analytics as a tool. And I think that will be very, very helpful as well.
Okay, thank you, John. And one more specific question is for the real-time crash risk visualization systems. What are the users? So it's for the public, or it's for the government? Yeah.
The information can be provided each way. The real-time crash risk can be put out into the systems. I don't know whether or not it's being done in Florida, in Washington. We are presenting that to the public. The analysis, the maps of our traffic flow systems, and we get a great deal of benefit because the information is provided to the public. What we're hoping in all these systems is that more and more information is either provided to the vehicles or provided to telephones or whatever it might be, so that people understand what's going on. What we benefit from with the systems as well is the ability to have predictive traffic flow and systems that are smoother in the way, if we're going to have to deal with the amount of vehicles and road users that are out on the system, if we can operate that better, we get a significant benefit in safety.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, actually, Dr. Ati is my advisor, and I graduated from UCL. It's good system. Yeah.
Good university.
Yes. Okay.
No, Professor Wang, I have a question for Susanna, if
yes, please,
if I may, please. Susanna, relative to the implementation project that you spoke about in Tanzania, how do you see the lessons learned from there applying to other areas, and how will you be able to transfer the knowledge from there so that other areas can improve from the lessons learned there?
Thank you so much, Christos, for the question. Indeed, the project in Tanzania, as I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, is a pilot. It's the first time that we are testing the framework developed within the UNRSC in Africa. And the intention is, in fact, to use and replicate that exercise and that framework in other parts of Africa, but also other low-income countries. What makes it important and easy in a way to replicate it is that the project is trying to build the institutional and regulatory capacity in the country to deliver safer road infrastructure. What we see in most of the developing countries is that bits and pieces are financed and bits and pieces of work are done via different type of projects, but we are not seeing that systemic approach that is really necessary to deliver impact and long-term in the country. So we will be working with them in reviewing not only the strategy and the action plan that they have for Tanzania in terms of safer road infrastructure, but as well we will look into geometric design standards for roads to see to which extent they are already embedding or not, and most of the time it's not, in fact, road safety as a key component rather than as an extra gadget that comes afterwards. The third key part of that project is the creation of a national accreditation and certification and training system within the country. Very often we see that, well, fortunately, thanks also to some more stringent KPIs put by the development banks in the loans that they make, now road safety audits are becoming mandatory for most of the projects. And unfortunately, the capacity is very often not in the country yet, so we'll be training the people, but making sure as well that they build up their own system to train and certify their own auditors. So in a way, we feel that by showing that it's going to provide a concrete experience and step-by-step approach that can be easily replicated in other parts of Africa. And there are a couple of countries that have already approached us to start looking into this opportunity.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Susanna, and thank you, Christos, for the question. Actually, Susanna, I have two questions. So, yeah, from your answers, the first question is, I think it's very important to conduct the transportation safety planning for either cities or for the regions. But based on my experience, because there's lots of good examples from developed countries, but I think we still need some case studies for the developing countries and the cities to learn. Is there any good results for the transport safety planning here for the middle level or low level income countries? Mm-hmm.
My microphone is open, yes. I think at least there's the understanding now that you needed to look at that question from that angle, right? We have been looking at the problem of road safety always from tiny little perspective. Mm-hmm. And Kima made a very important point in her presentation when she was referring to the growing and increased focus we are having right now, even within the road safety community, on equity, in fact. And that comes together with the idea of proper planning as well. We are seeing finally, well, at least starting from some of the countries, trying to build transportation systems around people and not the other way around. Most of the time it was building transportation systems around cars. Mm-hmm. And there's a growing attention, as both John and Kim were showing with their examples, especially at city level, in redistributing the space. And I think also Harald and Christoph had examples as well, because we know that the great work that they do as well with all the markets in trying to reshape city space and urban space. I think we're just at the beginning of the journey. It's not an easy journey, not just for the developing countries, but here in Europe as well. You see how how the debate about reallocating space within cities, and we're seeing that with the COVID, how political it gets immediately. I give you the example of Geneva, where I live and I'm speaking from. Fantastic public transport system, plenty of bike lanes. During the period of COVID, like many other cities, the mayor here decided to enlarge and expand the bike lanes and started segregating some of them as well, because the cars were not liking it. That measure has been opposed brutally, I would say, in Geneva, to the point that we are going backwards. So where do you start? We always say, it's political leadership, and I sit in many road safety meetings internationally, and the first recommendation or message that you see in all presentations, we need political leadership. Indeed, we need that. But I think it's a request for safety that has to come from the bottom as well, from the civil society movements. And it's starting. It's starting both, it's quite well advanced here in Europe, and it's starting more and more in developing countries as well, especially in Africa and in India. Right now, we're seeing that.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, sorry, John. Yeah, please.
Excuse me for interrupting. I would add that the road safety manual also, the PIARC road safety manual also provides a good discussion in terms of the planning and the need for planning in the approach. And it is focused on low and middle income countries. It does apply as well to high income countries, but that document does provide a good reference.
Okay, yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, my second question is, since you are talking about the trainings, actually I'm conducting lots of trainings. I just summarize for last 3 years, I delivered more than 50 trainings to the traffic police in China. Yeah, over 10,000 of senior traffic police. Because in my presentations, you can see our traffic safety records is not that good. There's a lot of challenges. So the traffic police needs knowledge, and they want to learn from outside. Is there is it possible to work together in future, like to deliver some trainings to the traffic police or traffic engineers in China and also some other countries?
The question is for me, Professor Wang.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely, of course. And trainings are at the core of our activities. We always do that in collaboration with either road agencies in the countries, because they come with a specific request for training their own engineers or police forces. But we do that very often in collaboration with universities, in fact.
Okay.
All this idea in mind that we should avoid having this ad hoc approach. We come, we deliver trainings, we go, and there's no follow-up. What we're trying to do as IRF is to develop the in-country capacity. We should make, it's important to have that exchange of expertise and knowledge, and we are ready to do that. But it's important that every country starts taking ownership of their own training processes and their own accreditation processes. I think the international type of organizations like PIARC, the TRB as well, I mean, with Christos and the International Cooperation Committee, it's fantastic the type of collaboration exchange that we can have. It's very important for us to always exchange, to bring the standards to a certain level. But then we should all strive to make sure that we build the capacity within the country and long term.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's very
collaborate in the future with pleasure.
Okay, thank you. And I think after the meeting, I will follow up with these issues of training. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, John, and other panelists to share the documents. Yeah, I noticed there's a lot of information and documents there. Okay, is there any question from our audience? Yeah, I have some questions for Christoph and Hera. So in your presentations, you mentioned by 2024, there will be the vehicle regulations. The drowsiness and distractions monitoring will be installed in all the vehicles. Can you provide more information about that point? Because it is very important, I think.
For sure. I will put as well in the chat room a link where you can see all the regulation, where you can even go through it with all the, including all the measurements which has to be undertaken by the OEMs in Europe in order to get a vehicle certified. So I will do that right away. Just keep on. Or perhaps you keep on going with another question meanwhile, and I'll put it on the. Here it is. It's the general safety regulation, and that's the link coming from ASEA. ASEA is the European Association of Automotive car manufacturers, and you can read all the details about that regulation on their webpage, and yeah, more than I would ever be able to tell you right now, because it's a very comprehensive regulation with a lot of measurements to be undertaken, and I just do not want to pick up now one single thing. If it's the black box recorder like you have it meanwhile in the plane, as I mentioned, the lane keeping system where I'm always coming and talking about. A lot of things.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I just got a message.
So
share that with everybody.
Okay. Okay, yep. Thank you. So, Crystal, you have questions?
No, Professor. Well, I had a question actually for all of our panelists to see, and this is a question going back to one of the things that we are doing both through TRB and through PIARC, which is on performance management. And we can ask our panelists to see their questions. So in performance management, many times we like to set realistic and achievable goals, yes, goals that challenge to reach them, but, realistic. But when we talk about safety, many of us set aspirational goals. Like, we use 0 fatalities or towards 0. How do you balance realistic achievements with the aspirational goals? So I know it's a challenging question when we are talking about aspirational goals. So who would like to take this one first?
So Christo, let me jump in because I'm having this discussion at our Department of Transportation right now. From my perspective, aspirational goals and target setting, it's all right. I mean, it comes down to how you set up your program, how you want to approach it, and what philosophy you're going to use to carry it out. I mean, we asked the question, how many people in your family are you willing to have killed or seriously injured? And the answer is always 0. We get that. From my perspective, it is, what is your commitment to safety? And that is more important. I mean, in many locations, some are setting increasing targets. Is that right? I think what we see is that we would rather try to be aspirational and not achieve those aspirational targets, but increase the reduction in fatal serious crashes than otherwise set something that's more realistic and achieve those targets, but not reduce the fatals and serious as much. So that's my answer to that question.
And if I may, Professor Wang, it's exactly the same answer you would get if you were to sit in the UNRSC meeting. Within the United Nations, we had tons of this debate when we were getting to Stockholm and now preparing for the second decade of action, and the action plan is currently being written, and we spend hours debating this. But that's the conclusion we get. It's better to put the aspirational target exactly as John just mentioned.
Kim, so you want to add?
Yeah, if you don't mind. I think of aspirational goals as the beacon on the horizon, and we're working towards that beacon. But we also, we don't know actually that it is aspirational, because technology is providing us lots of solutions. There are solutions out there between us and that beacon that we haven't discovered yet. So I think it's really important to have that beacon and to be headed towards that, because there's much more that we can do that we haven't tapped into yet. The next generation of leaders is going to provide us, more insight. I think if we have this mental barrier that we can't get there, then it will keep us from innovating. So I think that beacon is not just aspirational. And that goal is not just aspirational, but I think it's got to be our driving force to encourage us to challenge ourselves, to challenge the next generation, which I know is a very kind of mushy answer, but I think it's true even in our own personal lives about our goals.
Okay, thank you, Kim, for your answers. So, okay, I noticed Christoph said 2 more questions. Yeah, is there any more questions from our audience? Okay, yeah. One of our audience said, is it possible to receive a certificate of attendance in this webinar? So, actually, I don't have answers. So if anyone can answer this question, is it possible to receive a certificate of attendance in this webinar?
Is that for professional? I'm assuming the question is for receiving professional development hours, which we haven't really set it up at the beginning to be able to do that, but that is something for us to consider for the future.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Christoph, for your answers. So then we will be the last question. Okay, yeah, if nobody asks questions, I will ask the last questions. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, we have lots of presentations, lots of new technologies and new analysis techniques. So, but how to balance between the research and applications? I think, yeah, to Kim, yeah, since you are the chair of the TRB committee, safety committee, and you are also working in consulting companies. I think you might be the right person to answer this question.
Okay, yeah, I'll start now. Would just look forward to others to add on. But so okay, so both are important, and we think about practice-ready research from the Transportation Research Board perspective. So that's what we say when we're doing our research. We're looking for practice-ready research, which means that when we do research study, that there are immediate applications to the industry, which makes sense, right? If we're going to invest in it, we want that practice-ready. But I think exploratory research, broader thinking research is very important. I discussed this with my children. We talked about the recent Mars landing. So, there's a lot of problems on Earth, right? And so why is landing on Mars important? And it kind of goes back to the last question about that aspirational beacon. We need to continue to innovate and not always know where something is going to apply. So, Dr. Wang, it's a great question. I think both are equally important. That research that you don't know where it's going to land you just keeps you moving forward, keeps your mind opening. If we just think about the here and now, it goes back to the TISMO question about corridor management versus TISMO, right? So corridor management is about this corridor right now, and it's such a narrow view. And it has its role. I mean, the person who's in charge of that corridor has to move traffic. but you also need people to think broader and think about those broader applications. So it's both. And that was a long answer, but to me, it's both. You know, one helps to incentivize and innovate the future.
Perhaps a word from the industry perspective. As I mentioned in my Gartner hype cycle, we are in the productivity phase for CCOM, for CITS. So our research projects are much closer to reality, to the customer, to projects with tenders in the specific area of CCOM, and that's due to the hype cycle.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Kim and Christoph, for your answers. I noticed, I think there's a lot of change, dramatic change during these recent years in the data we used and the way of thinking and the countermeasures. Yeah, it's definitely it's very important for both sides. Yeah, but I think it's very important to consider both. Yeah. Okay, so it's Christoph. Now it's time for us to finish our panel discussion.
Yes. Thank you, Professor Wang, for leading the discussion among our experts. And on behalf of all of us who have worked on the organization of this webinar, I would like to thank the partner organizations, CHTS, DD, IRF, PIARC, Tongji University, and TRB for their support, and specifically the Director General of IRF, Suzanne Zamataro, the Secretary General of PIARC, Patrick Malajak, Dean Jiaming Ling, and Vice President and Secretary General of CHTS, Mr. Liu. What all of these organizations share is a vision for international collaboration that allows us to come together as transportation professionals and work together to arrive at solutions that benefit all of our agencies and countries. I would also like to applaud Didi for taking the great step of opening their data in order to help researchers and transportation professionals identify ways to enhance safety. During the last annual meeting of the TRB, the International Council actually organized a session specific to open science, and seeing a private company like Didi take steps to do that, it's really great to see. Before we close, I would like to send a big thank you to our speakers today for sharing their knowledge and expertise with us. And all of them are passionate for this topic, and feel free to reach out to them directly for further discussion, as our time here today was limited. So this webinar would not have been possible, however, without the support of CHTS and Ms. Nina Guan, Ningning Wang, and James Lin, and Professor Wang for his guidance. And of course, I don't want to forget my co-moderator from DD, Angel Gong. If we are in person, I would ask actually all of you to send them a round of applause for their work. But Ning Ning told me that you can actually do that in Bilibili. So please stay tuned as we move forward with CHTS and the partner organizations as we are continuing to work together for future webinars. Our next one in the series will be on integrated mobility management systems, MAS, MOD, ITS 2.0, and we'll bring even more experts and partner organizations together for a discussion on reimagining the future of mobility post-COVID-19 and how public agencies can play a more active role. We look forward to seeing all of you there as well. Thank you to everyone again for being here with us tonight. I would like to be cognizant of how late it is in China already. With that, dear Nina, would you like to say a final word, please?
Oh, yes, thank you, Christos. And it's yes, nearly, I think, 11 p.m. in Beijing. And thanks to all of the speakers who have given us very rich information and very good presentations. And thank you all of the audience who have stayed to the late with us for all of the exchanges and questions. Thank you, everyone. 谢谢.